Chapter 5787. Everyone was exhausted from the previous exchange of blows. Sitting on the green grass, the warm sunlight shone on their bodies, dispelling the cold from before. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the Holy Maiden Crystal. In the previous critical moment, she had accidentally discovered the method to use the Holy Maiden Crystal's healing ability. She finally understood why she had not succeeded before. First, it was because there was no one around her who was injured when she tried, and second, it was because she needed a chant to resonate with the Holy Maiden Crystal. Previously, when she had used the power of light to awaken everyone from the illusion, she had used the chant to amplify the effects of the power of light. At this time, she found that there was a connection between herself and the Holy Maiden Crystal that was not there before. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang began to chant. After everyone heard the chant, they all turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and immediately found that a rich light energy had wrapped around everyone. The faint green light entered everyone's body, causing their injuries to heal quickly. They had already experienced this feeling once, but when they experienced it again, they could not help but feel that it was magical. The Holy Maiden Crystal is really worthy of being a sacred object of the Holy Assembly. This healing ability is really amazing. Even pills cannot compare to it. Jiang Wenyan looked at the dazzling Holy Maiden Crystal in amazement. Hongzhuang, you really are the real Holy Maiden of Light. I heard that the Holy Assembly had tried many methods in the past, but they were still unable to stimulate the healing ability of the Holy Maiden Crystal. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, and her beautiful face became even more beautiful. I have also studied it for a long time, but I have not been able to figure it out. This time, it could be considered a blessing in disguise. Sister, now that we have the Holy Maiden Crystal, we do not need to waste time healing. Balian Che smiled brightly, his smile as bright as the moon. Bailey Hongzhuang blinked. There are many benefits to following me. With their injuries healed, everyone's spirits were also lifted, and they stood up one by one to continue on their journey. It is best for us to meet up with everyone as soon as possible and tell everyone about Junling Xuan, so that everyone could be mentally prepared. Di Beichen's expression was solemn. With the enmity between them, if the practitioners of the Di family and the Lin family saw Junling Xuan alone, they might take the opportunity to attack him. However, with Qing Devil's means, the disciples of the family were no match for him. Therefore, they had to tell everyone as soon as possible. They could not let everyone die. Everyone nodded. This was indeed the most urgent matter. It wasn't easy to reunite with everyone, but now we're separated again in the blink of an eye. Bailey Yinche smiled helplessly. But at least we're together. Everyone will be surprised when they see us. When we suddenly disappeared, everyone probably thought we were dead. Now that we reappear, it will indeed be surprising. Jiang Wenyan chuckled. It is quite interesting to think about it. Ling saw that Bailey Yinche and Jiang Wenyan were in a good mood and felt a little helpless. The two of you are really open-minded. We don't even know where we are right now. It'll be even harder for us to meet up with everyone. Linger, this depends on Wenyan. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at Jiang Wenyan mysteriously. Jiang Wenyan's smile was tinged with a trace of complacency, and he nodded. Chapter 5788. At times like this, we need a map. Jiang Wenyan smiled proudly. Di Beichen was shocked. You have a map of the ancient battlefield? How is that possible? Balian was dumbfounded. It was the first time that the ancient battlefield had appeared in the upper realm. Logically speaking, no one should know the layout of the environment, let alone have a precise map. I was lucky to get it by chance. Jiang Wenyan took out the map. However, the map only shows the general situation. We need to know more about the surroundings before we can determine where we are. Di Beichen took the map and looked at it carefully. He noticed that the pavilion in the middle of the lake was marked on the map. He was even more surprised. It really is a map of the ancient battlefield. Do you think I would lie to you? Jiang Wenyan chuckled. We are now on the grassland. There are no obvious features around us, so we need to continue to move forward to determine our location. It's much easier with this map. Let's go. Di Beichun relaxed a lot. In the huge, ancient battlefield, they were like headless flies when they didn't know where they were. However, everything was much easier with the map. As the primordial battlefield was just too big, they only confirmed their location after walking for a day and a night. Jiang Wenyan looked at the map in his hand and said, "We are now quite a distance away from the pavilion in the middle of the lake. I'm afraid it will take some time to walk back. Most importantly, I feel that even if we return to the pavilion in the middle of the lake now, everyone won't be there anymore." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. They had spent a lot of time healing their injuries. Moreover, the inheritance of the pavilion in the middle of the lake had fallen into the hands of Xiren and Yingying. At that time, she noticed that after Xiren and Yingying arrived at the pavilion in the middle of the lake, the zither music had disappeared. As such, it was even more impossible for the other cultivators to go to the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Since that's the case, let's go to the nearest marked spot on the map, Bailey Hongzhuang said. She had seen the map and knew that there were other marked places besides the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Obviously, these places were very special. Jiang Wenyan looked at the map in his hand and said, "This is the closest place to us at the moment. But are these red stones drawn on the map?" Di Beichen also looked at the mark on the map. "It is indeed a red stone. Could it be that this stone is a treasure?" Red stone. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. She quickly walked to Di Beichen's side. Her eyes lit up when she saw the red stone on the map. She was no stranger to it. "I think this red stone might be something special there, just like the pavilion in the middle of the lake. We'll know when we get there." Bailey Yin Che looked indifferent. After seeing the situation of the pavilion in the middle of the lake, he felt that there were treasures here, but it was extremely difficult to obtain them. "Does it look like this?" Bailey Hongzhuang took out a red spirit stone and showed it to everyone. Everyone was attracted by Bailey Hongzhuang's voice. After noticing the item in her hand, everyone was stunned. Chapter 5789. "Hongzhuang, what's that in your hand?" Jiang Wenyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. He was the first to meet up with Bailey Hongzhuang. This was not something that they had seen together. "This is the only thing I've found." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "Earlier, after I left the fog, I kept moving forward. Later on, I saw this redstone somewhere. There were quite a few of them. I realized that other than the difference in color, these things are even more powerful than high-grade spirit stones. So, Xiaohei and I collected all the blood spirit stones we saw." With a wave of her hand, Bailey Hongzhuang tossed a blood spirit stone to each of them. She smiled and said, "Take a look. What do you think?" Everyone held the blood spirit stone. The fiery red color reflected a dazzling light under the sunlight. It was as magnificent as a gemstone and extremely beautiful. Under the beautiful color, it contained an incomparably pure energy. After sensing this, everyone couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. To them, the effects of high-grade spirit stones were already extremely good. It was just that high-grade spirit stones were too few in number. They couldn't always use high-grade spirit stones for cultivation. However, the energy in the blood spirit stone in front of them was even purer and denser than that of high-grade spirit stones. If they could use the blood spirit stone to cultivate, their cultivation speed would definitely be even faster. "This is a blood spirit stone." Ling Er, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. Hearing this, everyone turned to look at her. Ling Er was the only one among them who knew about the immortal region. However, because her memories had been sealed, there were many things that she could not recall. However, she seemed to remember this blood spirit stone. Blood spirit stones are of a higher grade than high-grade spirit stones. They are very helpful to cultivators. Ling Er did not continue speaking. According to her vague impression, the cultivators of the immortal region seemed to use them for cultivation. After receiving Ling Er's affirmation, Bailey Hongzhuang was completely relieved. Although the color of this spirit stone was a little flirtatious, it was indeed a first-class treasure. "Then let's not hesitate anymore. Let's hurry over there. If we're late, we might lose the treasure," Xiaohei quickly said. As a money grubber, she was the most anxious at this moment. Although he and his master had picked up some earlier, there was no such thing as too much good stuff. Seeing Xiao Hei's anxious look, Everyone could not help but chuckle, but their footsteps unconsciously quickened. No one was willing to miss out on such a cultivation resource. Master, if Qing Devil really used Jun Lingshuan's body to return to the Jun family and took the opportunity to deal with the D family, is it possible for us to ask Granny Hua for help? Xiao He asked with concern. Even it could imagine how troublesome the situation was. At that time, if they really couldn't suppress it, perhaps only the people from the immortal realm would be able to stop all of this. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyelids drooped slightly, and her eyes sank into darkness. She fell silent for a moment, then said, I'm afraid it'll be a little difficult. Deep Beicha nodded. According to our daily interactions, Granny Hua and the others take great care of us. However, based on their character of staying in the abandoned immortal forest, they probably don't want to care about other things. They don't want to get involved too much in the affairs of the immortal region. They only want to live a carefree life, not to mention coming to the upper realm to help solve problems. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun. On this point, she and Di Beichun had the same opinion. Previously, when Granny Hua told her about some mysterious things, she knew that Granny Hua's way of thinking was very open-minded. It was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Chapter 5790. Even though they didn't want this to happen, sometimes fate couldn't be changed. Perhaps it was God's arrangement. Many times, an upheaval or catastrophe would cause chaos in the world, and people would be plunged into misery and suffering. However, the whole continent could also become stronger after such a catastrophe. Before such a thing happened, no one knew whether the final result would be good or bad. She had heard about such a situation from her mother-in-law before. At that time, she was very shocked. However, when she thought about it carefully, she couldn't deny that there was something wrong with it. Don't worry so much. Perhaps the situation isn't that bad. Di Beichun smiled warmly, and the haze in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes instantly dispersed. Although Qing Devil is great, he was defeated by me before and has stayed on the ancient battlefield for many years. Luck may not always be on his side. We'll find a solution. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. After experiencing the incident at the pavilion in the middle of the lake, she felt that there was always a way out. You may feel that you are at a dead end now, but you will never know if other possibilities will appear until the last moment. Therefore, you must never give up. Everyone quickly rushed towards the location marked with the blood spirit stone. Although the distance marked on the map wasn't very far, it was still far away. After rushing for several days, they still hadn't arrived. The ancient battlefield is really terrifying. It's a pity that we didn't get any information about the ancient battlefield from Qing Devil. Bai Lianche sighed. Ling glanced at Bai Lianche. In that situation, everyone wanted to survive. Who will want to know more? Di Beichun? Suddenly, a voice full of surprise was heard. Di Beichun turned his head to the right and saw Murong Jing and the cultivators from his family walking toward them. It's really you. After confirming that he wasn't mistaken, Murong Jing sped up and rushed over. His face was filled with disbelief and joy. Murong. Di Beichun also showed a comfortable smile. Although Murong Jing was his elder brother's best friend, their relationship was also very good after several contacts. It's great to see you all. Murong Jing's gaze swept over Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Then, he hugged Di Beichun and said, I've heard people say that you've fallen at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. I've been sad for a long time because I always felt that with your strength, this shouldn't have happened. Now it seems that I was right. You guys are really lucky. Di Beichun could feel Murong Jing's heartfelt joy, and his heart felt very warm. We were lucky. Otherwise, we would have lost our lives. Murong Jing then looked at Jiang Wenyin. Wenyin, you're really hanging out with Beichun and the rest now. Of course. Jiang Wenyin raised his eyebrows. If you're interested, you can join us. You're really calm. Murong Jing chuckled. You don't know how sad your family was when they found out about your accident. You'd better find your team as soon as possible so that they can rest assured. Chapter 5791. Looking at Jiang Wenyin's helpless look, Murong Jing chuckled. It seems that the place you came from is really deserted. However, this also proves that we are fated to meet. Indeed, Jiang Wenyin nodded. It's good to meet you. Morong, have you seen my big brother? Di Bachin asked. He had seen many cultivators when he was at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. However, he had not heard any news about his big brother until now. He did not know how his big brother was doing. No. Morong Jing shook his head. Morong Jing shook his head. I met Lin Taxing a few days ago. The cultivators of your family were with him. I also asked him about Xiaofeng, but so far, no one seems to have seen him. Hearing this, Di Beichun frowned slightly. It had been a while since they entered the ancient battlefield. Although the area was very large, most of the cultivators had already met each other. It was really strange that there was no news about his big brother for so long. Noticing Di Beichun's worried look, Morong Jing comforted him. Don't think too much. Xiaofeng will be fine. The area here is too large. Maybe he had some fortuitous encounter. I hope so. The haze in Di Beichun's eyes dissipated. He was also very confident in his big brother's ability. Now that Jun Lingxuan had fallen and Xiao Shou had died, there should be no problem if there were no accidents. Morong, I have to tell you a piece of shocking news. What news? Morong Jing raised his eyebrows. Apart from your safe return, what other news can surprise me? Jun Lingxuan has been possessed. As soon as these words came out, Morong Jing and the cultivators behind him were all stunned. Their mouths were wide open as they looked at Di Beichun in disbelief. This news was really too shocking. Di Beichun, did I hear wrong? Morong Jing was dumbfounded. He's been possessed. Who has possessed him? I seem to have heard that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shou disappeared with you. It seems that something terrible has happened. The possessor is called Qing Devil. He is extremely powerful. He must have been trapped in the ancient battlefield for a long time and is good at illusions. Originally, he intended to kill all of us, but fortunately, Hong Zhuang broke his illusion at the last moment and escaped. That's right. That fellow's strength is truly terrifying. We feel that we should inform everyone of this news as soon as possible. We must be careful if we encounter him, Jiang Wenyan added. Morong Jing remained in a daze for a long time after hearing everyone's words. Possession, this was something they all knew, but in reality, the probability of it happening was not high. The same body, but a different soul. Just the thought of it was enough to make one's hair stand on end. If this didn't come from your mouths, but from someone else, I definitely wouldn't believe it. Morong Jing sighed. He did not have a good impression of Jun Lingxuan, but it was too hard to accept that he had ended up like this. Let alone you. Even we find it hard to believe. However, it happened right in front of our eyes. Did Xiao Shou escape? Did you kill her or let her go? Morong Jing asked doubtfully. Bailey Hongzhuang spread her hands. This is very strange. After breaking the illusion, all of us left except for Xiao Shou. Perhaps she was captured by Qing Devil. Chapter 5792. According to what you said, the Qing Devil is so powerful and has taken over Jun Lingxuan's body. Won't it be troublesome if he uses Jun Lingxuan's identity to stir up trouble? Morong Jing quickly thought of the trouble. This was not just a family's disaster, but the entire upper realm's trouble. That's what we're most worried about now, but we don't have a solution for now, Bali Yanche said helplessly. We don't even know where he is now. We'll have to be careful if we meet him again. Morong Jing's face darkened. The other party would definitely not let Di Beichun and the others off. If he deliberately hid it, coupled with the power of the Jun family and the Xiao family, it would be really troublesome. Di Beichun nodded slightly. We can only take one step at a time. I hope we can improve our cultivation as soon as possible. I think it's difficult. Morong Jing shook his head and sighed. This ancient battlefield is really strange. Along the way, apart from hearing that Xiren and Yingying obtained the inheritance of the pavilion in the middle of the lake, I didn't hear about anyone else's gains. This place is so big. We might end up with nothing when we get out. Morong Jing was not the only one. The cultivators of the Morong family also looked dejected. It was not easy to come out and gain experience. If they did not gain anything, they might as well stay in the family and cultivate. Di Beichun smiled faintly. Let's go. I'll take you to a good place. Morong Jing was surprised. What good place? Why are you asking so many questions? You'll know when we get there. Jiang Wenyan smiled proudly. Murong Jing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other's secretive looks and could not help but feel even more curious. However, he also knew that Di Beichen and the others would not lie to him. Since they said it was a good place, there must be something to look forward to. The cultivators of the Murong family followed closely behind Murong Jing. Since they were walking aimlessly, it was naturally better to have someone to guide them. Di Beichen and the others walked in the direction indicated on the map. They had been on the road for a few days, and now they were much closer. After another 3 days, they stopped when they saw the iconic tree in front of them. That's right. This should be the place. Di Beichen stopped and turned to look at Jiang Wenyan. Jiang Wenyan nodded slightly. He had the same idea as Di Beichen. Murong Jing looked at Di Beichen and Jiang Wenyan's determined appearance, and then looked around. This was a completely open space. There was nothing here. What kind of good place was this? Stop keeping us in suspense. What's so special about this place? This was also based on what Bailey Hongzhuang had said earlier. This place was flat ground. Other than being underground, they could not think of any other possibility. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not doubt the situation on the map. They used their mental power to check the ground. However, after a quick inspection, everyone discovered something different. This place is so strange. It's difficult to use mental power to penetrate the ground, Bali Yen-che said in surprise. Chapter 5793. Now that they were standing on this piece of land, their mental power could only reach a depth of about 2 meters. They could not see anything further. This was too strange. There's something strange about this place. Murong Jing looked surprised. If he had some doubts before, he was now certain. Since there was something strange about this place, there must be some treasure in this place. Otherwise, such a strange situation would not occur. After everyone tried and found that the situation was similar, Linger said, "It seems that we can only dig." Bali Yen-che was stunned. This place was so big that no one knew where the blood spirit stone was. Although there were many of them here, it would be troublesome if they had to dig one by one. Other than this, can you think of any other way? Linger asked. Bali Yen-che shook his head. Other than this seemingly stupid method, he could not think of any other way. Everyone looked at each other and could only start digging. However, with their status, they would not normally put digging tools in their storage rings. Hence, the scene became very interesting. Everyone did not dig randomly. Instead, they dug 3 feet into the ground. However, after digging a large hole, they helplessly found that they did not find anything. It can't be that there's nothing here, right? Xiaohei could not help but ask. Everyone had been digging for so long. In any case, there should be a consolation prize, right? If there was nothing, it would be too depressing. It can't be. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. According to their judgment, this map could not be fake. The situation marked on it could not be wrong. Could it be that we're using the wrong method? Bailey Yen-che asked. Why don't we each try our luck and find a place to dig? Everyone looked at each other. At this time, they might really have to try their luck. I really don't understand. What are you trying to dig here? Murong Jing led his people and dug here for half a day. Until now, he still did not know what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were trying to dig here. Wife. Di Beichen turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood and threw a blood spirit stone at him. Di Beichen raised his hand to catch the blood spirit stone and handed it to Murong Jing. This is what we want to dig up. Murong Jing looked at the blood spirit stone in his hand. This was the first time he had seen such a thing. However, after sensing it carefully, he discovered that this thing was different from the rest. What a rich origin chi. Is this a spirit stone? Murong Jing asked in surprise. Di Beichen nodded. That's right, this is a blood spirit stone. Its value is even higher than a high-grade spirit stone. You're saying that there are blood spirit stones underground. That should be the case. However, it seems that obtaining this blood spirit stone won't be easy. Di Beichen spread out his hands. He hadn't expected such a situation. If it was said that Murong Jing had a lazy attitude when he was digging earlier, then at this moment, it was as if he had been injected with chicken blood. A high-grade spirit stone was already an extremely precious cultivation resource. Now that a blood spirit stone, which was even more precious than a high-grade spirit stone, had appeared, how could he miss the opportunity in front of him? Chapter 5794. They had stayed in the ancient battlefield for so long, but had not gained anything. They did not even have a target. Now, they had finally found their target. Even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground, they had to dig up this treasure. This was a real reward. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but laugh when they noticed the changes in Murong Jing's group. Sure enough, they would only work hard when they saw the benefits. Murong Jing felt a little embarrassed when he noticed everyone's gaze. He smiled sheepishly and said, "If you had told me earlier, wouldn't I have put in more effort? Haha, don't try to hide it. We've seen through you." Jiang Wenyin sneered without giving him any face. Everyone found a place to start digging. However, the result was still very frustrating. After digging for a long time, they did not find any trace of the blood spirit stone. How could this be? Bailey Hongzhuang could not understand. If there really was a blood spirit stone here, with so many of them digging, one of them should have found it, right? How could they not have found anything? Di Beichen also stopped digging. This situation might be a little different from what they had predicted. If they did not understand this point, they were afraid that no matter how long they dug, it would be useless. "Wife, what was the situation when you found the blood spirit stone? Tell me more about it." As Di Beichen spoke, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. They were also curious about the situation. "When I found a blood spirit stone, it was very easy. It was exposed on the ground, and part of it was buried under the ground. Xiaohei and I just dug up a little and picked it up. The environment here is different from the ancient battlefield. The soil there does not have such characteristics." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiaohei. Xiaohei also nodded. "That is indeed the case. It was very easy back then. How could it be as difficult as it is now? Perhaps it's a problem with this area?" Di Beichen said in a low voice. His eyes were filled with thoughts. After spending so much time digging, the sun had gradually set below the horizon, and night had begun to fall. Everyone sat on the ground dejectedly, trying to figure out where the problem had come from. At this moment, another team arrived at this area. Di Beichen's eyes lit up when he saw the leader of the team, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. Wenyin, the person in the lead, seems to be Huang Futing of the Huangfu clan, right? Murong Jing used his shoulder to nudge Jiang Wenyin as he spoke in a low voice. Jiang Wenyin nodded slightly. "That's right, it's him. I heard that he entered the ancient battlefield as a mercenary this time. The dignified young master of the Huangfu clan has actually fallen to such a state. It really makes one sigh. In the past, I didn't think it was a big deal. After all, the dark element has always been disliked by others. However, ever since I saw what the Di family did to Beichen, I feel that the Huangfu family's decision back then was a little too much. So what if it was of the dark attribute? Why do you have to force him to this extent? The competition between the Huangfu clan's disciples is even more intense than what we've seen. Everyone kicks a man who's down, so it's not strange for such a situation to occur." After listening to the conversation between the two, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Huang Futing with a complicated gaze. Chapter 5795. Only by establishing the Dark Sacred Assembly could the dark power be accepted by everyone. Only in this way would the cultivators of the dark attribute not be discriminated against. Not every family would be as tolerant as the Di family. Many cultivators did nothing wrong and were treated like this just because they awakened the wrong attribute. Thinking about it, this was indeed ridiculous, but it was true. After seeing Di Beichen and the others, Huang Futing could not hide the surprise on his face. Previously, after hearing that Di Beichen had fallen, all of them had fallen into endless grief. Di Beichen had given them hope back then. Because of Di Beichen, they had a direction to work towards. Although everyone had worked hard to improve their cultivation during this period of time, their hearts were unprecedentedly calm. This was because they were eagerly looking forward to the day when everyone would take them seriously. After living in the dark for too long, they only hoped that one day they would be taken seriously by everyone. Di Beichen had taught them the cultivation method of the dark attribute. which was why they were where they were now. However, if Di Beichun had fallen, then it seemed that they would return to their previous dark and hopeless lives, which was something they absolutely did not want to see. Even if they had only known Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang for a short time, these two people occupied an extremely important position in their hearts. For the past few days, everyone had been unable to sleep or eat well, and they were always worried about this problem. It was not until this moment that everyone was completely relieved. It turned out that the news was not true. Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang were still safe and sound. Noticing the expressions of Huang Futing and the others, Di Beichun had already guessed their thoughts. He chuckled and said, "Are you surprised that we are still alive?" Huang Futing originally thought that with so many people present, he did not dare to acknowledge Di Beichun. At this moment, after hearing Di Beichun's words, he also relaxed. When we heard the news that you had fallen, everyone was unwilling to believe it. Until now, everyone still hasn't calmed down. It's great to see that you're all fine. Not only Huang Futing, but the cultivators behind him nodded as well. Although they didn't say anything, their joy and excitement could be seen from their expressions. Jiang Wenyin and Murong Jing were a little surprised when they saw how close Di Beichun and Huang Futing were. They didn't expect the two to be friends. Although Beichun hasn't been in the upper realm for long, he is quite popular, Jiang Wenyin said with a smile. Murong Jing nodded. With Beichun's character, many people are willing to make friends with him. This is not strange. Perhaps it's because they're both of the dark attribute that they hit it off so well. Jiang Wenyin discovered that the relationship between Di Beichun and Huang Futing was not ordinary. Logically speaking, the two of them did not have many opportunities to interact on a daily basis, so the possibility of this was very small. The only explanation was that the two of them had the same attributes, so they had a lot in common. Do you need me to introduce you? Di Beichun looked at Jiang Wenyin and Murong Jing, then looked at Huang Futing. As far as he knew, Huang Futing was a rather famous figure in the upper realm. Perhaps he already knew Jiang Wenyin and Murong Jing. Hearing this, Huang Futing and Jiang Wenyin looked at each other and smiled. They said together, "No need, we've met before." Chapter 5796. As Di Beichun's voice fell, the smiles on the three people's lips deepened. "It's been a long time, Brother Huangfu." Jiang Wenyin smiled. "After you left the Huangfu family, I haven't seen you for many years." Huang Futing smiled faintly. It had been so long, and he had already accepted it. "Although I didn't change my surname, I have nothing to do with the Huangfu family anymore." Jiang Wenyin nodded. "I understand. I'm very happy to meet the new you, Brother Huangfu." "I'm very happy too." Huang Futing glanced at Di Beichun, and a sense of gratitude welled up in his heart. Ever since he left the Huangfu family, he had completely said goodbye to his previous identity. However, in everyone's eyes, he was just a joke. All these years, he had deliberately avoided people he knew in the past because he didn't want to see those mocking gazes. However, because of Di Beichun's introduction just now, he and Jiang Wenyin were once again on equal footing. He hadn't felt this way for a long time. In the past, he didn't understand why Di Beichun and Jiang Wenyin had only been in the upper realm for such a short time. Even if they had the support of the Di family, it was strange that they could gain a foothold so quickly. However, after interacting with them, he completely understood that the current Di Beichun was an existence he was willing to sacrifice his life for. To them, being on equal footing was more important than anything else. "What are you doing here?" Huang Futing also noticed the holes around Di Beichun and the others and asked doubtfully. "You'll have to ask Di Beichun about that," Murong Jing joked. Di Beichun glanced helplessly at Murong Jing and said, "According to the information we've gathered, there should be a blood spirit stone buried here, but we haven't found it after digging for a long time." "Oh." Huang Futing was a little surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang handed over the blood spirit stone. "This is a blood spirit stone. Any cultivator would be able to sense the power of this blood spirit stone just by sensing it. Such a treasure is buried underground?" Huang Futing was surprised. If it was really like this, then this was a great opportunity. "Originally, we were very confident, but now, we don't know." Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. She couldn't figure out what had gone wrong. Logically speaking, for this place to be so strange, there must be something special about it. Otherwise, it would be too strange. Why don't we give it a try as well? Huang Futing looked at the people behind him and asked. Following that, Di Beiqin and the others watched as Huang Futing's group began to dig around. However, the results were the same as theirs. After a short moment, Huang Futing and the others stopped as well, and they started to wonder exactly what was wrong with this matter. As the night deepened, everyone decided to stay here and rest for the night. Although the various situations in the ancient battlefield were a little strange, at least they didn't have to worry about any danger. Therefore, they could rest at ease at night. However, just as everyone was resting peacefully, Xiao Hei's voice suddenly rang out. Look, there seems to be something moving underground. As soon as he said that, everyone opened their eyes and looked at the ground. Chapter 5797. Suddenly, everyone became spirited. Judging from the range and volume of the fluctuation, it seemed to be similar to the Blood Spirit Stone. Could it be that the thing moving now is the Blood Spirit Stone? This thing has intelligence and can actually run? Bailey Yinshe revealed a look of surprise. If that was really the case, then everything made sense. No matter how they dug during the day, they couldn't find it. It might be in a very deep place and would only appear on the surface at night. It's very possible. Let's take a look and find out. Di Beiqin stood up. This situation also piqued his interest, and he felt that it was very interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also moved. This kind of strange scene was not usually seen, so they naturally wanted to see what was going on. Looking at the undulating ground in front of them, Bailey Hongzhuang pierced the ground with her sword and found that a Blood Spirit Stone had appeared very close to it. Taking out the Blood Spirit Stone, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile, "That's right, this undulating thing is the Blood Spirit Stone." At the same time, everyone also took the Blood Spirit Stones from the ground. I didn't expect this place to be so magical. The Blood Spirit Stones can move at night. Jiang Wenyin had a look of amazement on his face. This kind of situation was simply unimaginable on a normal day. But now it was really happening. Di Beiqin, you really didn't lie to me. This is really a good place. Murong Jing looked at the Blood Spirit Stone in his hand, his face full of smiles. This kind of treasure was really helpful for cultivation. Judging from the undulating ground, the number of Blood Spirit Stones here was also very shocking. Di Beiqin chuckled. Of course I wouldn't lie to you. Everyone should seize this opportunity. Hearing this, everyone smiled and responded. This was a good opportunity, and everyone hated that they couldn't grow more hands. Xiao Hei, Xiao Bai, and Xiao Xuanzi all moved together. They couldn't let go of such a good opportunity. For a moment, everyone was busy grabbing the Blood Spirit Stones. During this process, everyone discovered that the Blood Spirit Stones that were active on the surface were the easiest to grab. The other Blood Spirit Stones that were less active were located further down and were more troublesome to grab. Thus, everyone prioritized picking the best ones. In the process, if they were not careful, they would bump into each other. Situations where their heads bumped into each other also happened from time to time, causing everyone to laugh. Regardless of whether it was the cultivators from the Murong clan or the mercenaries with the dark attribute, everyone sighed in their hearts. If it were any other ordinary person, they wouldn't even mention such an opportunity. But who wouldn't want to keep it for themselves when they encountered a treasure? However, Di Beiqin and the others seemed to have never thought of this problem, and this point was deeply engraved in their hearts. When the first ray of sunlight appeared, everyone realized that the ground had stopped moving and returned to its original state. At this moment, everyone came to a realization. These spirit stones are really interesting. They only float around at night. Who knows where they have gone during the day? Huang Futing said with a smile. Everyone's harvest last night was not bad. It just so happens that we can rest during the day. Otherwise, if it was like this for the whole day, we would be exhausted to death, Bailey Yinshe said with a smile. Although it looked very simple, it was actually quite tiring after a whole night. Normally, everyone was not good at digging. After digging for a whole day, they really felt sore all over when they stood up. Chapter 5798. Fortunately, we didn't come to the ancient battlefield. Otherwise, we would have been frightened and not surprised at all. It would have been better to leave directly after cultivating outside. Hearing Jiang Wenyan's words, everyone nodded. They all had the same opinion on this point. Along the way, no one had gained anything. However, the blood spirit stone alone was enough to soothe everyone's gloominess. Huang Fu Ting, let me tell you a piece of news. Jun Ling Sun has been possessed by an expert from the ancient battlefield. Di Bei Chun put away his joking expression and said seriously. Hearing this, Huang Fu Ting was slightly stunned. Possessed? Yes, we saw it with our own eyes. Di Bei Chun nodded. We tried to dissuade him at that time, but he didn't believe us at all. Bai Yanche shrugged and spread his hands. There are still people alive on the ancient battlefield? Huang Fu Ting found it hard to believe. He had seen the battlefield, and the scene was really bloody and terrifying. Such a tragic scene, such a terrifying, murderous aura. He had always thought that everyone was dead. He didn't expect to suddenly hear such news. This was even more shocking than Jun Lingxuan being possessed. Di Beichen nodded and said worriedly, in short, this may be a big problem. We have to be mentally prepared. Huang Futing also understood Di Beichen's meaning. Originally, he was very happy to know that Jun Lingxuan was dead. After all, the Jun family had always been enemies with the Di family. The death of the Jun family's young master was definitely good news to them. However, after being possessed, the problem left behind by this method of death was obviously not small. After we leave here, we will try our best to inform others of this news so that everyone can be mentally prepared. I understand. In the next 2 days, everyone collected blood spirit stones at night and rested during the day. During this process, they increasingly felt that this land was magical. It was clearly a scene of devastation at night, but everything returned to normal during the day, as if nothing had happened. Although it had only been 3 days, everyone's harvest was extremely rich. In addition to the blood spirit stones, everyone had another harvest, and that was that their movement speed had increased. Because they had to grab the blood spirit stones as soon as they saw them, everyone moved as fast as they could. If they were even a little slower, they would miss this opportunity. In 3 days, everyone had practiced the ability to see and move quickly. At least, their speed was much faster than usual. Just when everyone thought that this could continue, the appearance of 2 teams broke the original silence. When everyone saw the Nangong family's team slowly pass by, they felt very uneasy. Di Bei-chun? Nangong Yuqing looked at Di Bei-chun not far away, his eyebrows slightly raised, his eyes filled with a trace of surprise. Long time no see, Nangong Yuqing. Listening to the other party's understatement, Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but think back to the time when he brought Nangong Xiao along to apologize. It was a stain that he would never forget for a long time. Thinking of this, Nangong Yuqing's expression changed slightly. I didn't expect you to be so lucky. It seems that you are surprised that we are still alive. Di Beichen smiled. Chapter 5799. Listening to Nangong Yuqing's impolite words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were too lazy to pay attention to him. In any case, there was nothing good between the 2 sides. However, from Nangong Yuqing's calm expression, they could see that what he said was true. He had indeed guessed that they were still alive. I heard that Jun Lingxuan disappeared with you. Since you are here, does that mean that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao So are already dead? Nangong Yuqing looked at Di Beichen. There was a great hatred between him and Di Beichen. Moreover, because of Nangong Xiaolong, he had lost face in front of Di Beichen. However, since Xiao So and Jun Lingxuan got engaged, the hatred between him and Di Beichen was not so deep. If it weren't for Xiao So, he wouldn't have offended Di Beichen. Now that Xiao So had completely rejected him, why should he still be obsessed with these things? Of course, he still didn't like him, but he wasn't as angry as before. Xiao So doesn't know, but Jun Lingxuan is indeed dead. Di Beichen said frankly. Oh, Nangong Yuqing chuckled. You are really calm. Aren't you afraid that I will spread the news and the Jun family will come to make trouble for you? Before Jun Lingxuan died, The conflict between me and his family never stopped. Besides, I wasn't the one who killed him. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Nangong Yuqing was slightly surprised. If you didn't kill him, who else could it be? You can only blame Jun Lingxuan for being greedy. He didn't listen to our advice and insisted on taking the storage ring, Jiang Wenyan added. Nangong Yuqing glanced at Jiang Wenyan. Ever since the last time he met Jiang Wenyan in the Piercing Wind City, he knew that Jiang Wenyan had become very close to Di Beichen and the others. As for the news of Jiang Wenyan, Di Beichen, and the others disappearing at the bottom of the lake, he had also heard about it. Most importantly, he had encountered the Jiang family's team not long ago. It seemed that everyone was extremely saddened by the news of their young master's death. Of course, he also understood why Jiang Wenyan stood out at this time. He wanted to prove that everything Di Beichen said was true. What does the storage ring have to do with his death? Nangong Yuqing was somewhat puzzled. He had also seen a storage ring during the battle, but as soon as he approached it, he was deterred by the terrifying aura it exuded and didn't dare try to take it. He believed that Jun Lingxuan was not a fool. After feeling such a terrifying aura, wouldn't he be courting death if he still tried to take it? That storage ring is different from the storage rings you have seen before. There is a soul inside. Jun Lingxuan's body has been possessed. Even though Di Beichen didn't have a good impression of Nangong Yuqing, he didn't intend to hide this matter. No one knew what Qing Devil would do with Jun Lingxuan's body. It was better to say it early so that everyone would be prepared. Nangong Yuqing's reaction was the same as Murong Jing and Huang Futing's. His face was filled with disbelief at first, but after noticing the seriousness on Nangong Yuqing's face, he understood that it was not a joke. Jun Lingxuan is too pitiful. He was actually possessed. Chapter 5800. If all of this is true, then you're really lucky. The other party didn't kill you as well? Nangong Yuqing raised his eyebrows. To be able to possess Jun Lingxuan's body, it was clear that the other party was much stronger than Jun Lingxuan. It was even possible that the other party was the soul of a powerhouse from the ancient battlefield. In the face of such a powerhouse, Di Beichen and the others shouldn't have been able to fight back. It was too strange that they were able to escape. Hearing Nangong Yuqing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were surprised. It seemed that Nangong Yuqing wasn't a brainless person. However, they didn't care whether Nangong Yuqing believed them or not, so they didn't intend to explain. The only reason they warned them was because they were cultivators from the upper realm. As for what the other party would do, it had nothing to do with them. Nangong Yuqing was waiting for Di Beichen's explanation, but when he saw that Di Beichen and the others didn't seem to have anything to say, he felt a burst of depression. Come on. Can't you explain everything? It's so depressing to only explain half of it. Of course, he wouldn't admit it. The cultivators from the Nangong family looked at each other in dismay. This news was too sudden. Up until now, they had never seen a cultivator being possessed. For a moment, they were looking forward to seeing Jun Lingxuan. If he was really possessed, they didn't know what would happen. After seeing that Di Beichen and the others didn't intend to pay attention to him, Nangong Yuqing licked his lips and suddenly said, "What are you doing here? We're tired from walking. Can't we rest here for a while?" Bailey Hongzhuang coldly said. Nangong Yuqing looked at the scorching sun above his head and suspiciously looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't know why, but he felt that this reason was a bit far-fetched. Under the scorching sun, even he felt extremely hot. If he really wanted to rest, he would have found a place with trees to sit and rest. Why would he stay here? When Murong Jing and the others noticed the suspicion in Nangong Yuqing's eyes, their hearts skipped a beat. It wasn't easy for them to discover the secret of this place, but they didn't want to share it with Nangong Yuqing. This guy really likes to be suspicious. Bali Yin-che rolled his eyes. We just happened to run into other people here, so we chatted for a while. With that, Bali Yin-che said, "Let's go. It's quite hot here." Everyone naturally understood what Bali Yin-che meant. They nodded and turned to walk forward. Seeing the other party turn around and leave without looking back, Nangong Yuqing's expression became even more awkward. Was he really thinking too much? However, just as everyone was about to turn around and leave, they suddenly heard other movements coming from behind. Brother Huangfu, long time no see. Nangong Yuqing smiled as he looked at the group behind him. His voice was filled with friendliness and joy. As soon as his voice fell, Huangfu Ting's body stiffened and he stopped in his tracks. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also looked at Huangfu Ting. Could it really be such a coincidence? Jiang Wenyan and Murong Jing turned around to look. As expected, the Huangfu clan's group appeared not far behind them. Chapter 58:01. That's right, it's them, Jiang Wenyan replied. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. She really didn't want to see anyone, but they just had to appear. From Huangfu Ting's point of view, it was obvious that he didn't want to see anyone from the Huangfu clan. They had been so cruel to him, without the slightest bit of kinship or concern. In addition, he wasn't living a glorious life, so he naturally didn't want to see them. The darkness attribute cultivators all looked at Huangfu Ting worriedly. No matter how carefree he usually appeared, they all knew that things weren't as simple as they seemed on the surface. Just like themselves, they also felt the same way about their former family members. However, they were better off than Huangfu Ting. Huangfu Ting was the one who had truly fallen from the heavens to such a state. Although there was a huge psychological gap between them, they definitely couldn't compare to Huangfu Ting. Brother Nangong, it's indeed been a long time. Being able to meet this time proves that we're fated. The young leader of the Nangong clan smiled as he looked at Nangong Yuqing. From his amiable attitude, it was obvious that the two of them had a good relationship. It's been a few years since we last met. I originally thought that you would also appear in the Immortal Cloud's secret realm, but I didn't expect to not see you. Huangfu Gang smiled faintly. Previously, I was tied up with other matters, so I didn't have time to go to the Immortal Cloud secret realm. In fact, I've always regretted it. You're too modest. Do you think I don't know you? The Huangfu clan is so powerful, and your experience is not something we can compare to. Nangong Yuqing smiled. Di Beichun, let's go. Huangfu Ting, who had been silent all this time, spoke up. Just by hearing the familiar voice, he already knew who it was. However, he really didn't want to face the other party right now. Di Beichun nodded. All right. With tacit understanding, everyone quickened their pace. However, just as they were about to leave, a voice rang out from behind them. Big brother, is that you? Huangfu Ting moved even faster, and the other party rushed out of the Huangfu clan's group without any hesitation and quickly caught up to Huangfu Ting. After seeing the familiar face, the man's face was filled with indescribable excitement. He grabbed Huangfu Ting's arm tightly. Big brother, it's really you. Great, I've finally found you. Looking at the familiar face in front of him, Huangfu Ting couldn't control his emotions. Huangfu Ting fell into silence as he faced the other party's sincere gaze. Fourth brother, he is no longer a member of our Huangfu clan. How can you still call him big brother? Huangfu Gang's displeased voice came from behind with a hint of reprimand and admonishment. Come back quickly. Don't talk to this person who appeared out of nowhere. Huangfu Chung glared at Huangfu Gang. Second brother, how can you be so cold-blooded? I don't care about that. He's my big brother. Even if he's chased out of the family, he's still the big brother I respect the most. This has never changed from the beginning to the end. Fourth brother, you. Huangfu Gang became angrier and angrier at Huangfu Chen's rude rebuke. Back then, this was a decision made by the clan. How could you violate the clan's rules? What do you mean by clan rules? My big brother has never done anything wrong. Those punishments are also groundless accusations. Chapter 58:02. Big brother, you left the family without saying anything back then. I've been looking for you, but there was no news at all. I'm so happy now. I wasn't interested in this ancient battlefield, but I didn't expect to see you here. Everything was worth it. Fourth brother, I'm no longer a member of the Huangfu family. Just forget about me and pretend that you never had a big brother like me. Huangfu Ting's eyes dimmed. He had always understood how important he was in Huangfu Chen's heart. Even though the entire family was extremely disappointed that he had awakened the dark force, Huangfu Chen had never cared about this from the beginning to the end. Over the years, he had long become indifferent to the Huangfu family, and even subconsciously erased his former identity. However, Huang Fu-chun had always been a person in the depths of his memory. At least he had a younger brother who had never betrayed him. Whenever he felt despair because he could not see the light of day, he would always think of this sunny face in front of him. That was his spiritual pillar to persevere, because he hoped that one day he could reunite with the family he recognized. Now that he was cultivating with deep Beichun and knew that he was going to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly, it was an unprecedented hope. He hoped that one day he could stand in front of the Huangfu family and let them understand that there was no problem with the Dark Force. He could also become an outstanding cultivator. Big brother, don't talk nonsense. Huang Fu-chun was a little anxious. I know everyone's attitude towards you is very bad, but that's them. In my heart, you've always been that outstanding big brother. Fourth brother, don't be silly. Huang Fu Gang walked over. Do you think he's still the dazzling, peerless genius from back then? Feel his aura. His current cultivation is still inferior to yours. A dark attribute cultivator is destined to be abandoned by the upper realm. If you still want to be his follower like back then, you're courting death. Huang Fu Gang's every word stabbed Huang Fu Ting's heart like a sharp blade. The humiliating and sullen scene from back then seemed to appear before his eyes again. No one knew what kind of disdain and discrimination he had endured back then. Wasn't the arrogant Huang Fu Gang in front of him like a follower back then? The affairs of the world were just so unpredictable, making people sigh with emotion. Huang Fu Gang, I respect you as my second brother, but don't go too far with your words. Huang Fu-chun glared at him. If Big Brother hadn't awakened the darkness attribute, would you have your current position? Don't forget, you couldn't compare to my big brother back then. Bang! Huang Fu Gang unceremoniously punched Huang Fu-chun in the face. Wake up and figure out who you're talking to. You. Huang Fu-chun was furious. Just as he was about to explode, Huang Fu-ting stood in front of him and looked at Huang Fu Gang calmly. Fourth brother is still young and doesn't know any better. You don't have to be so calculated with him. Huang Fu Gang chuckled. Huang Fu-ting, you're no longer a member of the Huang Fu clan. Don't flatter yourself. What right do you have to call him fourth brother? Sensing Huang Fu Gang's arrogant attitude, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others frowned. Chapter 58:03. Huang Fu-ting was once the next patriarch of the Huang Fu family. As the second young master of the Huang Fu family, Huang Fu Gang had always been shrouded in the halo of Huang Fu-ting. It was not until Huang Fu-ting left the family that he took over Huang Fu-ting's previous position and became the current young master. Murong Jing knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun had just arrived in the upper realm and did not know much about the Huang Fu family, so he took the initiative to introduce them. After hearing this introduction, Bailey Hongzhuang completely understood. It turned out that there was hatred between the two of them, so at this moment they were speaking so impolitely. Even though there were many things that she did not know, she could guess from Huang Fu Gang's appearance at this moment that he was shrouded in the halo of Huang Fu-ting, how depressed and jealous he was. Even though he had everything now, he was still unwilling to let go. Just when everyone thought that Huang Fu-ting could not help but lose his temper, he remained calm and did not even show any anger on his face. That's right, I was wrong. I'll leave now, okay? Even though Huang Fu-ting was very tolerant, the jealousy in Huang Fu Gang's eyes did not dissipate. You've disappeared for so many years. I thought you had died long ago. Now it seems that you've been able to live until now because of your ability to be a coward. TSK, it's really interesting. At the same time, the cultivators of the Huang Fu family could not help but chuckle. Feeling the strange gazes of everyone, Huang Fu-ting could not help but clench his hands. He deliberately tolerated it not because he was afraid of Huang Fu Gang, but because he did not want to implicate Di Beichun because of his own affairs. He understood that Di Beichun was a very loyal person. If he had a conflict with Di Beichun now, he would definitely not sit idly by. However, he did not want Di Beichun to make an enemy of the Huang Fu family. He was very grateful to Di Beichun because he had brought him endless hope. Everyone looked at Huang Fu-ting, who was so tolerant. It was hard to imagine that such an arrogant person could be like this now. It inexplicably made them feel a little distressed. How glorious were you back then? No one was in your eyes. Now, you actually appeared here with a group of mercenaries. If it weren't for the mercenary guild discovering the ancient battlefield first, I'm afraid you wouldn't even have the chance to experience it. You're really down and out. Huang Fu Gang sized up Huang Fu Ting and the cultivators behind Huang Fu Ting, and his eyes were filled with disdain. I don't think you're that great. If it wasn't for Huang Fu Ting's awakening dark attribute, you would be nothing in the Huang Fu family now. Bailey Hongzhuang stood up, her cold eyes filled with disgust. You're the one who took advantage of him when he left. You should at least express some gratitude. Now that you're so aggressive, are you trying to prove that you're stronger than him? Linger sneered. Why didn't I see you so arrogant when I was in the Huang Fu family? You're really a villain intoxicated by success. The sudden sarcasm stunned Huang Fu Gang. After noticing that there were two peerless beauties standing up for Huang Fu Ting, he was a little shocked. Oh, I really didn't know that you were quite popular with women. Are they also from the mercenary guild? Huang Fu Gang asked. Chapter 5804. After listening to Nangong Yuqing's introduction, Huang Fu Gang looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a different expression. No wonder he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang looked familiar, but he had never seen such a beauty before. Only now did he remember that he had seen a portrait of the Saint of Light. He never thought that the real person would appear in front of him. The Saint of Light. Huang Fu Chun was pleasantly surprised. Although he had never seen the Saint of Light before, he had heard many rumors about her. In a short time after coming to the upper realm, she had already gained a firm foothold, and no one could compare to her in terms of the light attribute. Such a legendary woman had appeared in front of him, and was even speaking up for his brother. He felt that his brother's life was not as miserable as Huang Fu Gang had described. Huang Fu Gang's eyes flickered with a bit of embarrassment, but his attitude was no longer as unscrupulous as before. No matter who it was, they had to be wary of the power of the Holy Assembly. Saint of Light, I didn't know your identity and was a bit rude. I hope you can forgive me. Huang Fu Gang cupped his hands apologetically. If Bailey Hongzhuang had not seen Huang Fu Gang's face before, she might not have taken his words to heart. But now that she knew what kind of person Huang Fu Gang was, she could only say those words out of consideration for his feelings. Huang Fu Ting was her friend. No matter what his identity was, she could not accept that Huang Fu Gang had bullied his friend. Moreover, it was impossible for such people to become friends. You don't have to be so courteous now. After all, we are already on opposing sides. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Huang Fu Gang indifferently. Her hostile attitude was particularly obvious. Huang Fu Gang frowned. He did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would not give him any face. No matter what, he was the young master of the Huang Fu family. On the contrary, Huang Fu Ting was just a has-been. She actually chose to stand on Huang Fu Ting's side. I have long heard that the Huang Fu family is a great family, but looking at you now, I feel that the Huang Fu family is just a facade. Di Beichen looked coldly at Huang Fu Gang. Ever since this guy appeared, he had been very unhappy. You don't have the slightest bit of affection for your own big brother. You're so overbearing and even mocking him. If you were heartless back then because of the power of darkness, I think it would be difficult for you to even leave the Huang Fu family alive. As soon as he said this, everyone could not help but laugh. Di Beichen was still as sharp-tongued as ever. He did not give the other party any face. Huang Fu Gang's face was full of haze. Di Beichen, right? This is our family's business of the Huang Fu family. You have no right to interfere. Didn't you just say that Huang Fu Ting has nothing to do with your family? How can you say it's a family matter now? Di Beichen asked. Huang Fu Gang was stunned. His face turned awkward as he said angrily, In short, this is our business. It's none of your business. Then you are wrong. Di Beichen shook his head and put a hand on Huang Fu Ting's shoulder. He is my friend. His business is my business. If you provoke him, it is the same as provoking me. Huang Fu Ting's body stiffened slightly. A warm current flowed through his heart. Whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang who stood out first, or Di Beichen who now regarded him as a brother, they both made him feel extremely warm. Chapter 5805. Huang Fu Gang looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief, thinking that Di Beichen and the Holy Maiden had gone crazy. Anyone who wasn't a fool wouldn't choose to stand on Huang Fu Ting's side at this time. On one side was the young master of the Huang Fu family, and on the other side was a dark attribute cultivator with no future. However, these two people chose Huang Fu Ting without hesitation. Were they crazy? Nangong Yuqing could understand Huang Fu Gang's thoughts at this moment. If this happened to someone else, he would find it strange, but when it happened to Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang, he didn't find it strange at all. These two people had always acted like this, even when they chose to help Ao Lingxiao. However, the end result proved that they were right, and Ao Lingxiao was wrongly accused. Madmen. These people were madmen to begin with. In the past, it was only them, but now, even Morong Jing and Jiang Wenyan had become part of it. Huang Fu Ting, I didn't see how capable you were. Huang Fu Gang's eyes were cold. I don't know what's so good about you. Apart from Huang Fu Chun and that slut, you've also attached yourself to the Radiant Sacred Assembly and the young master of the D family. Bailey Hongzhuang, you are the holy maiden of the Radiant Sacred Assembly, yet you're protecting a dark attribute cultivator. Aren't you afraid that the Radiant Sacred Assembly will punish you? Huang Fu Gang's eyes shone as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Others were fine, but light and darkness were irreconcilable. As the holy maiden of light, she actually dared to collude with a dark attribute cultivator. Wasn't she just seeking her own death? You don't have to worry about that. I know what I'm doing very well. Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude was unrestrained, still as calm as before. I think you've been in seclusion for too long, so you don't know much about the outside world. So what if I'm the holy maiden of the Radiant Sacred Assembly? My husband is a dark attribute cultivator. Do you think I'll be afraid? What? Huang Fu Gang couldn't help but raise his voice, his startled eyes wandering between Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang. Then, he suddenly said, I was wondering why you were with Huang Fu Ting. So you're both of the dark attribute. Huang Fu Gang, how is Wanner now? Huang Fu Ting, who had remained calm all this time, suddenly became agitated. He quickly walked forward and rushed before Huang Fu Gang. His pitch-black eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the latter, as if he was suppressing his endless emotions. You mean that bitch? Huang Fu Gang raised his eyebrows. Huang Fu Gang didn't expect that Huang Fu Ting, who had been enduring silently, would dare to attack him at this moment. He couldn't dodge in time and took a solid punch. Huang Fu Gang took 2 steps back. His resolute face seemed to be set ablaze, and his eyes turned red. He fiercely punched Huang Fu Ting's face. You dare hit me? After that bitch married me. I know she still misses you in her heart. Huang Fu Gang hit Huang Fu Ting madly. What's so good about a guy like you? I've been so good to her. Why is she still thinking about you? Since you've already left, why are you still haunting me? Isn't it better to just die? Huang Fu Gang roared, his blood-red eyes filled with endless anger. Bali Yin Che wanted to pull Huang Fu Gang away, but was stopped by Di Beichun. Chapter 58:06. Even if Huang Fu Ting wasn't Huang Fu Gang's match, this kind of power wouldn't take his life. It would only cause physical pain. Although everyone didn't like Huang Fu Gang's smug look, it seemed that the grudge between the two wasn't simple. There was even a woman involved. From Huang Fu Gang's roar, everyone understood that the woman was the most important reason for the grudge between the two. The two brothers fell in love with the same woman, but that woman loved Huang Fu Ting. It was originally an excellent arrangement, but fate made a fool of her and she married Huang Fu Gang. Perhaps this was the helplessness of a big family. Facing Huang Fu Gang's fist, Huang Fu Ting didn't retaliate. The fist smashed on the face. It was very painful, but it couldn't compare to the pain in his heart. When he left the family, the most painful thing was this. Even if Wanner begged him to take her away, he couldn't do that. He didn't even have a future for himself, let alone a future for Wanner. Even now, he didn't feel that his decision was wrong. He knew very well how he had come through all these years. If it wasn't for the unyielding belief supporting him, he might have really disappeared from this world long ago. However, when he heard the news about Wanner, he was still so heartbroken. Once they were innocent. One had always believed in him and worshipped him. It was already very close to their wedding date, but at that time, his talent awakened. When Huang Fu Ting's face was covered in blood, Huang Fu Gang finally stopped. Look at yourself now. Do you still have the high spirits from back then? Huang Fu Gang's face was expressionless. Instead of living like this, I might as well just die. Huang Fu Ting didn't speak. He struggled to get up from the ground. His eyes were dim, but the determination in his eyes never wavered. After venting, Huang Fu Gang didn't seem to be willing to say anything more. Facing the gazes of Di Beichen and the others, his expression changed slightly. He didn't expect himself to be unable to control his emotions at this time. Let's go. Huang Fu Gang waved his hand and led the cultivators of the Huang Fu family forward. They're leaving just like that? I thought there would be a big fight. Xiaohei shook her feet and said as if the world wasn't in chaos. Huang Fu Chen did not leave with them. Instead, he stood firmly beside Huang Fu Ting. Big brother, just let me go with you. Ever since you left, there's no point in me staying in the family. Everyone follows second brother, but I don't like him, Huang Fu Chun said gloomily. A trace of a smile appeared on the corners of Huang Fu Ting's mouth. Don't be silly. Look at me now. Could it be that you want to fall into such a state as well? Your cultivation talent has always been very good. Only in the clan can you receive the best training. Is it really that important to have a high cultivation base? I think living happily is the most important thing. Huang Fu Chen's expression was firm. Big brother, you still don't understand that strength and the future are not the most important thing. I know you left for Sister One Er's sake, but do you know? Ever since you left, I haven't seen Sister One Er smile. Second brother treats her well, but I know that she's not happy at all, let alone happy. Huang Fu Chen's words caused Huang Fu Ting's heart to tremble. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Was he wrong? Chapter 5807. Faced with Huang Fu Chen's question, Di Beichun and the others fell silent. From Huang Fu Ting's point of view, they felt that he was right, but from Miss One Er's point of view, perhaps this was the decision she didn't want to see the most. Big brother, I've respected and worshipped you since I was young. Even after you left the clan for so many years, my thoughts have never changed. I feel that a man shouldn't make a woman sad. If you can't even do this, then don't call yourself a man. Huang Fu Chen's words were fierce, and his emotions were even more agitated. He had searched for Huang Fu Ting for so long and finally met him. This time, he had tried his best to persuade him. Otherwise, if he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when they would meet again in the future. Huang Fu Ting remained silent. Huang Fu Chen's words had given him too much shock, including what Huang Fu Gang had said earlier. All of this reminded him of the past. Seeing this, Huang Fu Chen couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although it was the first time they had met, he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang would help Huang Fu Ting. Miss Bailey, you're a woman. I believe you understand a woman's thoughts the best. If you were Sister One Er, what would you choose? Bailey Hongzhuang didn't expect Huang Fu Chen to turn the question to her in the blink of an eye. For a moment, even Huang Fu Ting looked at her. After a while, Bailey Hongzhuang said, I don't know about your situation in the past, but for a woman, nothing else is more important than being with the person she loves. There are many types of women in the world. Some valued the future more, some valued relationships more, but none of them are wrong. She had never met Miss One Er and didn't know her true thoughts. However, judging from what Huang Fu Chen said, Miss One Er should be deeply in love with Huang Fu Ting. Even though Huang Fu Ting had left the clan for so long, her thoughts hadn't changed. This proved that she valued her relationship with Huang Fu Ting more. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Huang Fu Ting's body trembled, and his gaze became even more complicated. Even if he didn't say anything, everyone could feel the sadness that came from his heart. It was a type of pain and sorrow that spread from the bottom of his heart and went deep into his bones. It was even to the extent that it was impossible to express with words. It carried boundless regret, yet he was powerless to do anything about it. Huang Fu Chen tugged at Huang Fu Ting's shirt. Big brother, did you hear that? Huang Fu Ting raised his head, his eyes sparkling. Fourth brother, she's already married. Hearing this, Huang Fu Chen was startled and could not help but loosen his grip. That's right. Even if Sister One Er's heart hasn't changed, she is still married. Big brother, you know that it's just a marriage alliance. It's a marriage alliance that has no other choice. But in the end, they got married. Huang Futing lowered his eyes. His entire being was in desolation. Everything that had happened in the past could no longer be rewritten. Even if he knew what Warner was thinking, it was too late. Everyone fell into silence. This situation was indeed very difficult to resolve. Even if they were not married, as long as Miss Warner was willing to elope with Huang Futing, they could still be together. However, if they eloped under such circumstances, they would really have to bear a bad reputation and not be able to face anyone. Chapter 58:08. Bailey Hongzhuang and Linger looked at each other. They knew too well that, as a woman, it would be unbearable for her to bear such infamy. Master, I'm afraid this matter is uncertain. Xiaohei sighed. Although she often wished for the world to be in chaos, in this kind of matter, she hoped to see the lovers get married. She originally thought that it was still very possible for Huang Futing and Miss Warner to be together. After all, in her opinion, dark attribute cultivators had a very bright future. Even if the cultivators in the upper realm had not accepted them yet, she believed that it was only a matter of time. After the Dark Sacred Assembly was established, everyone's opinion would gradually change. As long as Huang Futing was no longer in a state of being looked down upon, with his ability, he could give Miss Warner a very good future. However, just getting married was already an insurmountable chasm. Even if their hearts were together, it was impossible for them to be together all the time. Huang Fuchun fell into silence. He was thinking that if he saw his big brother, he and Sister Warner would leave with him. To him, the family did not make him reluctant to leave. In fact, in the past, he was also full of a sense of belonging to the family. However, when he saw how cruelly the family treated his big brother, he felt that everything seemed to be a little different from his judgment. In such a heartless family, there was no point in staying any longer. On the contrary, it was not necessarily impossible to go out and explore. He did not care about anything else. He just followed his heart. It was not until this moment that he realized that he had thought too simply. It turned out that everything was different from before. Even if he wanted to leave, it would not be so easy. Fourth brother, if you still don't come, then you can stay by yourself. Huang Fugang's voice came from the front. Huang Fuchun subconsciously looked forward, and a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. He took out something from his storage ring. Big brother, Sister Warner, said that if I see you, I must give this to you. What is this? Huang Futing looked at the brocade pouch in his hand in confusion. Huang Fuchun shook his head. I don't know. Sister Warner said that before I see you, she won't let me open it. Only you can see it. Huang Futing didn't hesitate to open the pouch right away. He hadn't seen Warner for a long time. Before he left, he didn't even take their keepsake. No matter what it was, staying by his side was just a thought. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not pay too much attention to it. They guessed that it was a letter from Warner to Huang Futing. After leaving, he had never seen her again. His longing for her should have been recorded in this letter. However, when he saw the contents of the paper, he suddenly took 2 steps back. His emotions became agitated in an instant, and tears flowed out of his eyes. Everyone couldn't help but be stunned as they looked at Huang Futing, who'd suddenly had a great change in mood, and they looked at each other. They were completely unable to understand exactly what was written on this piece of paper to cause him to have such a breakdown. Could it be that what was written on it was not her longing and worry for him, but a heartless letter? Chapter 58:09. Huang Futing didn't answer. He slowly squatted down and ran his hands through his hair. His eyes were already filled with tears. The gentle and kind girl from back then kept appearing in his mind. He had seen her often since he was very young. Because their families were friends, they had cultivated together since they were young and experienced together. At first, they didn't understand the feelings between men and women, but later on, they developed feelings for each other. Everything was so natural. Perhaps their feelings for each other had not experienced any great storms, but in their eyes, this kind of long-term relationship was more sincere. When he chose to leave, he was very pained. Even when Wanner cried and begged him to take her away, he didn't agree. He thought that after a long time, Wonder would gradually forget about him. But now it seemed that he thought too simply. Wonder was never a fickle girl. Most importantly, he never thought that Wonder would do this for him. Big brother, what did Sister Wonder give you? Huang Fu-chun was puzzled. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out what could make Huang Fu-ting fall into such emotions. He took the paper from Huang Fu-ting's hand, but when he saw the two bright red words at the top, he was stunned on the spot. His face was full of shock. A letter of divorce. Those two big words were clearly a letter of divorce. It's a letter of divorce. How is this possible? Although he knew that Sister Wonder had always been thinking about his big brother, he also understood his second brother's feelings for Sister Wonder. Logically speaking, it was absolutely impossible for his second brother to write a letter of divorce. As soon as Huang Fu-chun finished speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood what was going on. Heavens, it's a letter of divorce. Xiaohei was stunned. So this means that Miss Wonder has already made up her mind to leave with Huang Fu-ting. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She was inexplicably shocked and touched. It seems that Miss Wonder really has deep feelings for him. In order to be with him, she has already prepared everything. Bali Yin Che frowned slightly. Isn't it said that Huang Fu-gang likes Wonder very much? Why would he write a letter of divorce? Sometimes, it's even more painful to have her as a person, but not her heart. Jiang Wenyin sighed emotionally. When Huang Fu-gang made an appearance earlier, she kept feeling that Huang Fu-gang was too overbearing, petty. However, he now understood why Huang Fu-gang treated Huang Fu-ting like that. Perhaps it wasn't because of his darkness attribute, nor was it because Huang Fu-gang couldn't compare to Huang Fu-ting back then and wanted to show off in front of him. The real reason was that the person he loved had fallen in love with Huang Fu-ting, especially when he saw that Huang Fu-ting could not compare to him at all. Yet he was still able to capture the heart of the person he loved. This kind of pain might not be any lighter than what Huang Fu-ting had endured all these years. It was torture in the heart. Big brother, this is indeed second brother's handwriting. Huang Fu-chun looked at the divorce letter carefully and turned to look at Huang Fu-ting. Chapter 58:10. Huang Fu-ting nodded slightly. He had recognized Huang Fu-gang's handwriting when he saw the words divorce letter. In fact, he had seen how much Huang Fu-gang liked Wonder back then. He had always been willing to give up many things to Huang Fu-gang, but he could not give up on Wonder. Suddenly, he understood why Huang Fu-gang had beaten him so fiercely. Perhaps it was because of the unwillingness in his heart, or perhaps it was because of his current miserable state. Big brother, Sister Wonder gave you this divorce letter. Does that mean you two can be together? Meng Sheng asked. All of their helplessness and despair had been resolved with this divorce letter. In fact, he knew very well that although Sister Wonder had married his second brother, she had always lived alone in a place. Normally, she would be in closed-door cultivation. She almost never had the chance to see his second brother. They were just husband and wife in name. Huang Fu-ting fell into hesitation. In this situation, he did not know what would happen if Wonder followed him. Most importantly, if Wonder's family knew what she was doing, they would definitely be furious. Not only Wonder, but even Huang Fu-gang might be severely punished for writing such a divorce letter. After seeing Huang Fu-ting hesitate, Di Beichon suddenly said, Huang Fu-ting, since Miss Wonder is prepared to abandon everything, as a man, could it be that you are not as courageous as a woman? That's right. You are a dignified man. She has done so much for you. If you still betray her, then don't blame me for looking down on you. Murong Jing could not help but speak up. He still remembered the first time he saw Huang Fu-ting. He was so high-spirited. Even if he stood in front of a group of outstanding cultivators, he was still a person who could not be ignored. However, the current him was far too different from before. Although he understood that it had not been easy for him all these years, as a man, he should bear the responsibility that he should bear. If it was him, if a woman was willing to do this for him, then even if he had to give up his life, he would definitely take her far away. You have to be brave. Only when she is with you will she feel happy. Bailey Hongzhuang also spoke up. She had yet to meet this Miss Wonder, but her heart was already filled with deep admiration. So far, She had never seen a girl who dared to love and hate like this. Even if she had to bear the infamy of the world, even if she had to abandon her family, she was still willing. She understood that this was definitely not the result of a moment of impulse. Huang Futing had left the family for so many years. In these years, Warner had probably thought of all the consequences thousands of times. She must have spent a lot of effort just to get this divorce letter. After so many years, she didn't even know if Huang Futing was still alive, but she still did all of this. What an admirable woman she was. Huang Futing raised his head and looked at the crowd in front of him. Although everyone's words were not very polite, he knew in his heart that everyone was cheering for him. Everyone was supporting him. At this moment, he had also erased his cowardly self from his heart. He could no longer hide like a coward. He had to face it bravely. Chapter 58:11. Everyone watched as Huang Futing stood up, his dark eyes fixed on everyone. His eyes were overflowing with brilliance, blooming with an unprecedented, dazzling light. A warm smile bloomed on his heroic face. He suddenly turned around, his voice firm and serious. "Fourth brother, do me a favor." "Big brother, tell me." Huang Futing nodded hurriedly. He seemed to have guessed what Huang Futing was going to say next, and the corners of his lips had already risen quietly. "When you go back, find a way to take Warner away. I will wait for you in Emperor Cloud City." "Okay." Huang Futing solemnly agreed, his bright eyes shining like unpolished jade. "Big brother, don't worry. I will definitely bring Sister Warner to you. When the time comes, you can't drive me away." Huang Futing laughed heartily, the haze in his eyes completely dispersing. Warner's actions had brought him endless strength. In the past, he had no future, but now he saw hope. Even if he was abandoned by his family, so what? He would stand up again. He would become the dazzling Huang Futing of the past. Since the family didn't give them a way out, he would create a bright path for Warner himself. "Don't worry. As long as you are willing to stay, I will never drive you away." Looking at the bright Huang Futing, Huang Futing only felt that his old big brother had returned. "Good." Huang Futing couldn't hide his joy. "When we leave the ancient battlefield, I will quickly go to Emperor Cloud City. Hurry up and catch up with the team now." Huang Futing chuckled. "Okay." Huang Futing nodded and was about to leave when Huang Futing suddenly placed a tranquil bag in his hand. "This thing is helpful for cultivation. Take it with you." "Big brother, you need cultivation resources more than me." Somewhere in his heart trembled deeply. Huang Futing's voice suddenly became hoarse. His big brother had always treated him like this, always thinking of him when he had good things. Until now, this hadn't changed. "Don't worry about me. I'm fine now." Huang Futing subconsciously looked at Di Beichun. It was this excellent man in front of him who brought hope to the dark cultivators. "Take it." Huang Futing looked at the tranquil bag in his hand, then looked deeply at Huang Futing. His smile was as bright as the sun. "Big brother, thank you." In the next moment, Huang Futing turned around swiftly. His steps were light and quick because he could finally put down the stone that had been weighing on his heart for many years. "Thank you," Huang Futing said as he looked at everyone. In the past, he had never had the courage to take this step, but everyone's words had completely awakened him. Murong Jing placed a hand on Huang Futing's shoulder. "Huang Futing, actually, I'm quite envious of you. It's rare for a woman to be so sincere to you. You must not let her down." Huang Futing nodded. "I understand. I let her down in the past, but I won't do it again." "That's good." Smiles appeared on everyone's faces. Seeing such a result, everyone felt sincerely happy. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think of Huang Futing's angry scene from before. It must have been very painful all these years. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Di Beichun. Her gentle voice carried a sigh. "Beichun, my opinion of Huang Futing has suddenly changed. Did he think it through long ago and let go?" Chapter 58:12. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was like a flower as she nodded. "Me too." She understood that Huang Futing was not as heartless as they had thought. He definitely loved Warner deeply, but he was unwilling and angry to deal with Huang Futing, but there was no hatred. Otherwise, if he was really narrow-minded, He would rather kill Huang Futing than give the two of them a chance to be together. That outburst, just now, was him putting an end to everything that had happened in the past. After Nangong Yuqing left with Huang Fu Gang's group, he felt that something was wrong. He felt that there must be a reason why Di Beichen's group stayed there. He wanted to stay and find out what was going on, but he just inexplicably left with the Huangfu family. He had been in the ancient battlefield for so long, but he hadn't gained anything. According to his understanding, Di Beichen's group was very lucky. If they had gained something, wouldn't it be a pity to miss it? Just as he was thinking about how to tell Huangfu Gang about this, Huangfu Chen's figure suddenly caught up from behind. Huangfu Gang felt the footsteps and turned his head to look, but he didn't say anything. "Brother Huangfu, don't you think it's strange that Di Beichen's group gathered there?" Nangong Yuqing lowered his voice. "I think there might be something we don't know. We've been in the ancient battlefield for so long, but besides the pavilion at the center of the lake, we haven't gained anything. It's strange that Di Beichen's group seems to be very lucky. Look, the inheritance of the pavilion at the center of the lake fell into the hands of their friends." At this moment, Han Bowen led the disciples of the Blue Cloud sect and arrived nearby. When he heard the name Di Beichen, his eyes lit up. As far as he knew, Jiang Wenyin and Bailey Hongzhuang had already met up with Di Beichen. Although everyone said that they had died in the lake, in his opinion, as long as he didn't see their corpses, they might still be alive. Although he was forced to give up, he was still thinking about the treasure. "Brother Nangong." Han Bowen greeted him with a smile. After Nangong, Yuqing noticed Han Bowen and the others. His expression also changed. His calm face revealed a bit of caution and vigilance. "Brother Han, it's rare to see you take the initiative to greet me. Brother Nangong, it's been so long since that incident. There's really no need to take it to heart. What do you think?" Han Bowen had a smile on his face. "Back then, we were all young and immature. Moreover, it's inevitable to have some small conflicts during training." Nangong Yuqing narrowed his eyes, a trace of haze flashing through his black pupils. They had a conflict in the early years, so he didn't have a good impression of him. Now that this fellow had taken the initiative to make peace, he must have some purpose. Otherwise, with this fellow's character, it was impossible for him to take the initiative to put down his face. "What you said makes sense." Nangong Yuqing nodded. "Let's forget about the past. I'll take my leave first." Even if Nangong Yuqing said that he didn't care, his cold demeanor showed that he didn't intend to bury the hatchet. "Brother Nangong, wait." Seeing that Nangong Yuqing was about to leave, Han Bowen quickly stopped him. Chapter 58:13. Seeing that Nangong Yuqing didn't seem to want to talk to him, Han Bowen didn't mind and kept a gentle smile on his face. "I think I heard you mention Di Beichen just now." Han Bowen asked tentatively. "I heard that they died at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Is that true?" Nangong Yuqing looked at Han Bowen suspiciously. "Is there a conflict between you and Di Beichen?" "There isn't much of a conflict. I'm just curious about this matter. If you don't want to tell me, then I don't need to tell you." Nangong Yuqing lazily withdrew his gaze. "We still have to continue looking for opportunities, so we won't accompany you." "Brother Nangong, why are you in such a hurry?" Han Bowen sighed inwardly. Nangong Yuqing was also a shrewd person. If he didn't make things clear, then he definitely wouldn't tell him the truth. Thinking of this, he made a decision. "Actually, when I was in the ancient battlefield, I saw Jiang Wenyin obtain a treasure. At that time, I was planning to snatch it, but I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to suddenly appear and let them escape. Later, I heard that they had died, but I didn't believe it. Maybe they had encountered other opportunities. If I could see them again, I would also like to." Before he finished speaking, his meaning couldn't be more obvious. Nangong Yuqing didn't expect Han Bowen to be so clear about the matter, but he was very interested in the treasure. "Do you know what kind of treasure Jiang Wenyin obtained?" Han Bowen shook his head. "I'm not too sure. At that time, he was in a cave. It should have been left behind by a senior from the ancient battlefield. At that time, he immediately put it away, so we didn't even have a chance to see it. However, you've also been in the battlefield, so you should know how amazing the treasures of those seniors are. Their tyrannical auras aren't something we can touch, but Jiang Wenyin obtained one. I think it must be something amazing." Han Bowen guessed. Now can you tell me if you know anything about Di Beichun? Nangong Yuqing hesitated for a moment before saying, "They are indeed not dead. I just saw them." Han Bowen's eyes lit up, but he wasn't surprised. As expected, were they now? Over there. Nangong Yuqing pointed ahead. Big brother. When Huang Fuchun saw Nangong Yuqing point out Di Beichun's position, he couldn't help but look at Huang Fugang. After knowing that Di Beichun and Huang Futing were extremely close, he had already treated Di Beichun as one of his own. Naturally, he didn't want anything to happen to Di Beichun. Huang Fugang only glanced at him indifferently, his expression cold and distant. "You don't need to worry about this." But just as Huang Fuchun was about to explain himself, he saw Huang Fugang turn his head away. He didn't even seem to be interested in talking to him. Letting out a faint sigh in his heart, Huang Fuchin boy understood that his previous actions had completely angered his second brother, so he did not bother with him at all. It seemed that whatever he said was already useless. "Thank you, Brother Nangong." A smile appeared on Han Bowen's face. He cupped his hands and prepared to leave with his team. Chapter 58:14. Han Bowen paused and raised his eyebrows. "Brother Nangong, why don't we go together? There aren't many treasures in the ancient battlefield, but each of them should be incredible. As long as we take them back, we'll split them equally." After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, he was worried. Just Bailey Hongzhuang was difficult enough to deal with, let alone Di Beichun. Even though they hadn't been in the upper realms for long, they were all difficult to deal with. Nangong Yuqing turned to Huang Fugang. "Brother Huangfu, what do you think?" He had seen the strength of Di Beichun and Di Beichun. Even if his current cultivation was higher than theirs, after experiencing the Immortal Cloud's secret territory, he was afraid of the strength of these two people. The darkness attribute taboo technique was terrifying. Even if their two teams worked together, they might not be able to deal with it. Didn't he want to teach Di Beichun a lesson to regain the face he lost? However, he didn't dare to act rashly. When Han Bowen saw Nangong Yuqing's actions, he was surprised. The fewer people there were, the better. If there were too many people, there would be less to split. Of course, he didn't have any objections. The Huangfu family's strength was well known. Since he was here, they couldn't ignore him. "That's right, Brother Huangfu. This is a good opportunity." Huang Fuchun couldn't help but feel anxious. But before he could say anything, Huang Fugang had already refused. "You guys go, I won't go." Huang Fugang said to Nangong Yuqing, "Brother Nangong, we'll meet again if fate wills it." Hearing this, Nangong Yuqing felt that it was a pity, but he didn't try to persuade him. After what happened, Huang Fugang probably didn't want to face Huang Futing again. Sure enough, dealing with family matters was the most troublesome. Huang Fugang gave the order. Although the Huangfu family's cultivators were curious about this matter, they all left. "Brother Nangong, are they difficult to deal with? Is that why you want to ask Huang Fugang for help?" Han Bowen asked. Nangong Yuqing's expression darkened. He nodded and then shook his head. "They're difficult to deal with, but it shouldn't be difficult for our two teams to deal with them." "That's good." Han Bowen let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had found a helper. Otherwise, the result would have been terrible. "Even if you didn't come, I wanted to go back and take a look. I feel that they're in a strange place." "What do you mean?" Han Bowen calmed down and carefully listened to Nangong Yuqing's thoughts. After Nangong Yuqing explained the situation to Han Bowen understood what was going on. "According to what you said, this matter is indeed a little strange. Let's go and take a look." The two of them hit it off immediately. If they were going alone, they would still be a little worried. However, with a companion, things would be different. "By the way, did you see Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou along the way?" Han Bowen shook his head. "No, but the enmity between the Jun family and the Di family is deep. They disappeared together. Since Di Beichun and the others are still alive, I'm afraid that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou are in danger." Chapter 58:15. Possession. Even someone as calm as Han Bowen couldn't help but raise his voice at this moment. This was too shocking. Could it be that he doesn't want to admit that he killed Jun Lingxuan? So he deliberately made up this reason? Impossible. Nangong Yuqing shook his head with certainty. "I've dealt with him before. Although I don't like Di Beichun, I have to say that he's a straightforward person. If he really killed Jun Lingxuan, then he shouldn't deny it, let alone make up such an unacceptable reason. Seeing this, Han Bowen stared at Nangong Yuqing. He didn't know why Nangong Yuqing was so sure, but he was inclined to believe it. I understand. Han Bowen nodded slightly. He had already made up his mind. If he saw Jun Lingxuan in the future, it would be best to stay away from him. Otherwise, if he really was a peerless expert, who knew what the result would be? After Huang Futing's matter was resolved, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were in a very good mood. Among them, the most obvious was the group of darkness cultivators. Although this was Huang Futing's matter, they also seemed to have seen hope. If Huang Futing could bravely take this step, then so could they. Who didn't want to be with the person they liked? Hongzhuang, let's leave this place for now. Di Beichen saw that everyone had calmed down and said, "We'll attract too much attention if we stay here. Nangong Yuqing is already suspicious. With his temperament, I don't think he'll let go of this opportunity. Maybe he's not far away, waiting to see what we do." Everyone looked at each other. Di Beichen's words were indeed reasonable. Nangong Yuqing had already asked this question before. That's right. Then let's leave first. It won't be too late to come back at night, Li Yanche said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Let's go. Everyone walked forward, but they didn't follow Huang Fu Gang's direction. They didn't want to run into him again. It would be best if they never ran into him again. After everyone had walked for a while, they suddenly saw a familiar figure on the way. However, when they saw this person, they did not find it strange at all. Only the person beside him caused their expressions to darken. Nangong Yuqing, did you come back because you missed us? Di Beichen looked at the surprised Nangong Yuqing with a mocking expression. This guy's suspicions were really heavy. According to Nangong Yuqing's thoughts, Di Beichen's group should have stayed there for a long time, but now they had left. Could it be that his judgment was wrong? Han Bowen also looked at Nangong Yuqing with a puzzled expression. Nangong Yuqing had made a solemn vow before, but now it seems that he wasn't. Han Bowen, we meet again. Jiang Wenyan's handsome face was filled with endless coldness. His ink-black eyes were filled with a cold seriousness. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't happened to appear, he wouldn't be in this world right now. Feeling the murderous intent in Jiang Wenyan's voice, Han Bowen's expression changed slightly. The corner of his mouth raised into a faint smile. Yes, what a coincidence. Originally, Di Beichen didn't know Han Bowen, but when he heard this name, his deep eyes were covered with a layer of darkness. When he saw Jiang Wenyan earlier, he had already mentioned this matter. Chapter 58:16. Nangong Yuqing, it seems you want to fight us to the end. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was cold, her voice full of disgust and provocation. When you left, I thought you had changed your temperament, but now it seems that it's really easy to change a leopard's spots. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Nangong Yuqing's expression became somewhat awkward. In fact, if it weren't for Han Bowen's appearance, he really wouldn't have wanted to confront Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. According to his original plan, he wanted to hide and observe Di Beichen and the others. But now that Han Bowen appeared, the smoke of gunpowder suddenly filled the air. Looking at Nangong Yuqing's tangled appearance, Han Bowen was secretly surprised. He didn't expect Nangong Yuqing to be so afraid of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. It was really beyond his expectations. Jiang Wenyan, I'm sure you know why we're here, so there's no need to beat around the bush. Take out the thing, and this matter will be over. Ah, Di Beichen suddenly sneered, his long and narrow eyes narrowed dangerously, flashing a cold light that made people's hearts turn cold. Who gave you the courage to be so arrogant? His cold voice was filled with extreme arrogance, and his disdainful eyes were enough to intimidate everyone. Just his expressionless face alone was enough to give people endless pressure. Facing Di Beichen, Han Bowen suddenly felt his hands and feet turn cold, and the fear that came from the bottom of his heart spread uncontrollably. His heart was frantically trembling. This was the first time he had come into contact with Di Beichen, and the latter's aura was simply extraordinary. Qin Yun Sek's eldest senior brother, Qin Hongliang, seeing this, stood in front of Han Bowen. His aura, as steady as a mountain, made Han Bowen breathe a sigh of relief. Young Master Di, This is the first time we've met. You really live up to your reputation." Qin Hongliang's expression was calm, as if it didn't feel the terrifying aura. Di Beichen narrowed his eyes. Whether it was strength or mental strength, Qin Hongliang was obviously stronger than Han Bowen, but he wasn't affected in the slightest. He really did have some ability. "Same here, young Master D. We have no intention of being your enemy." Qin Hongliang's calm voice carried a calming power as he slowly said, "As far as I know, this item was discovered by my junior brother and young Lord Jiang at the same time. It's normal for us to want to snatch it. I don't think it's possible for you to not interfere, but I also hope that you understand that we're all standing on our own side. I also hope that you won't take it to heart." Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also looked at Qin Hongliang in surprise. This person's words were quite interesting. Judging from his words, today's battle was unavoidable, but he hoped that they wouldn't be enemies in the future. Di Beichen quietly glanced at Qin Hongliang, the corners of his lips hooked up into a mischievous smile. Just when everyone thought that he would agree, his tone suddenly changed. "You think what you said makes sense?" Qin Hongliang was stunned. "Han Bowen first wanted to kill my brother, then he attacked my wife. If it weren't for the fact that you're no match for my wife, you wouldn't have hesitated to make a move, right? Now, you're telling me that we'll be friends even if we meet? Your thinking is too simple." A cool breeze blew, and his white robe and black hair fluttered in the wind. That devilish face was even more captivating. Chapter 58:17. Looking at Di Beichen, Nangong Yuqing, and the others could only feel that even someone as powerful as him was being completely suppressed. Bailey Hongzhuang and Jiang Wenyan's eyes were overflowing with brilliance, and the corners of their mouths couldn't help but curl upwards. Murong Jing looked at the man in front of him, and even as a man, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration. He was really handsome. That's right. No matter who he was, if he dared to kill someone he cared about, then he wouldn't rest until he was dead. So what if he was crazy in the eyes of others? Ever since Di Beichen came to the upper realm, he had always been a maverick existence. The eyes of Huang Futing and the other dark attribute cultivators were full of worship and reverence. That was their belief. The Dark Holy Sun was different from ordinary people. From a moment he made up his mind to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly, he had already subverted everyone's understanding, and yet he still went crazy for it. Qin Hongliang stared at Di Beichen in a daze, and when he came back to his senses, his face had turned ashen. For a long time, he had always said this kind of thing. When had he ever met such an arrogant guy? Di Beichen, aren't you overestimating yourself? Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you're the young master of the D family? Don't forget, if you don't have this identity, you are nothing at all. Qin Hongliang had already thrown his previous bearing to the side, and his roaring appearance didn't have the slightest bit of calmness and composure. If it wasn't for the D family and the Holy Daughter of the Light, no one would know who Di Beichen was. Di Beichen just looked at Qin Hongliang indifferently, and his voice was as gentle as water, like the sound of nature, but it made people unable to help but go crazy. Indeed, if I wasn't the young master of the D family, how could you be the eldest senior brother of the Blue Cloud sect? You. Qin Hongliang gritted his teeth, and only felt a stream of air rushing to the top of his head and exploding with a loud bang. Blood rushed to his face, and even his ears turned the color of pig liver. Let's see what you're capable of. In the next moment, a long staff appeared in Qin Hongliang's hand. This long rod was completely red, and there was a golden, protruding totem on top of it. It was as if a golden dragon was circling around it, and it was awe-inspiring and imposing. With a single glance, one could tell that this long staff was no ordinary item. Bang! With a stomp of the long staff, spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the ground with the place where it landed as the center. Seeing this, everyone's pupils constricted. The strength of this long rod was obvious. This Qin Hongliang is an extremely outstanding disciple of the Blue Cloud sect. It is said that he is the junior of an elder. Whether it is cultivation resources or weapons, he is much better than ordinary cultivators. I heard that this long staff was something he obtained from a ruin a few years ago, and the Blue Cloud sect gave it to him as a reward. Not only that, it is said that he has already broken through to the Radiant Moon realm. Beichun, you must be careful. Murong Jing approached Di Beichun and introduced him in a low voice. Di Beichun's eyes turned slightly. From the moment Qin Hongliang appeared, he knew that his strength was not ordinary. Up until now, there were very few cultivators who had broken through to the Radiant Moon realm among the various forces. Since Qin Hongliang was able to break through, his strength was naturally not weak. Do you dare to fight one-on-one with me? Qin Hongliang waved his long staff, and even the air was filled with a sonic boom. The long staff was pointed directly at Di Beichun, and his ink-black eyes were as cold as knives, and his murderous aura was threatening. Chapter 58:18. Han Bowen had wanted to ally with the Nangong family to deal with Di Beichun and the others, but he had never expected that the situation would suddenly turn into a conflict between the two of them. Do you think I'm inferior to him? Qin Hongliang glanced at Han Bowen indifferently. The coldness and indifference in his eyes shocked Han Bowen. He immediately shook his head and did not dare to persuade him anymore. However, Qin Hongliang seemed to have been provoked by his words. His voice became even more resolute and unyielding. I won't stop until one of us dies. Do you dare? Di Beichun looked at the face in front of him that was flushed red with anger. His black eyes were like deep pools that contained a sharp and intimidating light. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, bringing with them an extreme danger and charm. Looking at Di Beichun like this, the women present could not help but exclaim in their hearts, "Evildoer!" He was a living evildoer. However, that extreme overbearingness and wildness of his made people fall deep into it and unable to extricate themselves. I'll accompany you to the end. The cold words were filled with an endless, domineering aura. The cold and arrogant aura emitted from his body made people shudder. Qin Hongliang, who was originally furious, felt an inexplicable sense of guilt at this moment. However, he forced himself to maintain the angry expression on his face, unwilling to let others see the fear in his heart. In the next moment, Di Beichun stepped forward. His incomparably handsome face was cold and indifferent. The silver-sharp sword reflected an eerie cold light under the sunlight. His white robe fluttered without any wind, and his black hair brushed past his face. He was like a god descending to the mortal world. Make your move. The corners of his lips curled up dangerously. His extremely pleasant voice was filled with murderous intent. Ah, Qin Hongliang roared. He, who had long since been unable to withstand such an aura, charged forward crazily. The red long rod in his hand was vigorous and powerful. The air seemed to be stirred by the long rod. His cultivation of the Radiant Moon realm was completely exposed as he attacked Di Beichun with frightening momentum. Di Beichun's figure flashed like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, he quietly landed behind Qin Hongliang. After Qin Hongliang saw Di Beichun's figure disappear, he quickly locked onto the aura behind him. As the eldest senior of the Blue Cloud sect, his combat experience was also extremely rich. With a backflip, he waved his long staff and blocked Di Beichun's sharp sword. Ding! The blade of the sword collided with the long staff, and sparks flew everywhere. After sensing Di Beichun's cultivation, Qin Hongliang's heart was also at ease. Nebula Stage 9. Even if Di Beichun was really an outstanding existence in the same realm, it was impossible for Di Beichun to be his opponent in the gap between the two realms. If he killed Di Beichun, he would be famous from now on. After sensing the gap between the two's cultivation, Huang Futing and the others could not help but worry. He turned his head to ask Bailey Hongzhuang, but he saw a faint and elegant smile on the latter's beautiful face. That was the gentle gaze of someone looking at the person they loved, and it was also filled with deep trust. Seeing this, Huang Futing was even more confused. Miss Bailey, there is a gap between the young master and Qin Hongliang's cultivation. Aren't you worried at all? Worried about what? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her clear black and white eyes were filled with confidence. Don't worry, Beichun will be fine. Before fighting with a cultivator of the Radiant Moon realm, she would be worried about this problem. However, even when facing Qin Devil, Di Beichun could hurt him. This proved the true power of his killer move. Chapter 58:19. Although Huang Futing was doubtful, he believed in Bailey Hongzhuang. Since she said so, there was no need for him to worry. After the crowd put down their worries, they were no longer as nervous as before. Instead, they carefully observed the battle between the two. Clang, clang, clang. The sword and the staff kept colliding. The attack range of the staff was larger than that of the sword. In order to injure Qin Hongliang, Di Beichun had to close the distance between them. During this process, the crowd also witnessed how terrifying his ghostly figure was. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. They could only rely on their aura to lock onto him. If they were even a little slower, they would be seriously injured. However, Qin Hongliang's title as the eldest senior brother of the Blue Cloud sect was not for nothing. He had rich battle experience and was very powerful. For a moment, the two sides were neck and neck. In the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, this was the scene, but in the eyes of Nangong Yuqing and the others, it was a completely different scene. Qin Hongliang was in the Radiant Moon realm. Although they knew that he had not used his killing move, the fact that they were tied showed that there was a problem. Nangong Yuqing secretly judged in his heart. If the person fighting Di Beichun at this moment was him, would his performance be better than Qin Hongliang's? The more Qin Hongliang fought, the more frightened he became. He thought that this would be an easy fight, but now it seemed that was not the case at all. Di Beichun's movement technique was exquisite. Although there was a gap of one realm between them, his strength was not weaker than Nangong Yuqing's. As a result, Nangong Yuqing did not have any advantage. Wood binding technique, Qin Hongliang shouted coldly, and the power of the wood element burst out. Then, to everyone's amazement, they saw a piece of wood suddenly appear, densely intertwined together like a snake. In the blink of an eye, it formed a huge cage, trapping Di Beichun in it. This is the technique of a wood element cultivator. Bai Lian Che's eyes narrowed, and a trace of shock and worry appeared on his handsome face. After the awakening of an elemental talent, the cultivators of each element would master the offensive techniques of their respective elements. However, it wasn't easy to grasp these methods. Not only did it require the methods of their respective powers, it also required their own comprehension ability. Obviously, this was their first time coming into contact with the wood binding technique. These vines seemed to have a life of their own as they continued to compress Di Beichun, as if they were trying to strangle him to death. Qin Hongliang controlled the wooden strips with both hands. He had only started cultivating the wood binding technique after breaking through to the Radiant Moon realm. This wood binding technique seemed easy, yet it was extremely difficult to cultivate. It required one to have sufficient understanding of the wood attribute and be able to communicate with the wood attribute in the heavens and the earth before controlling and transforming it into one's own strength. He had spent a lot of effort to cultivate the wood binding technique and had failed many times before it began to take shape. He believed that it was impossible for Di Beichun to master such a method, since he had yet to break through to the Radiant Moon tier. Di Beichun waved the sword in his hand, and in the blink of an eye, he had stabbed more than 100 times. But for some reason, these vines were extremely sturdy, and even the sharp sword could not pierce through them. Seeing that the gap in the cage was getting smaller and smaller, he knew that if he couldn't escape, he would really die here. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. This was the first time she had seen such a method, and it was definitely not easy to break through. She wanted to help, but the auras of Nangong Yuqing and the others had already locked onto them. Chapter 58:20. Damn it, I didn't expect Qin Hongliang to be able to learn this move. Morong Jing cursed. His usually gentle face was now full of anger. This kind of move was almost unbreakable for cultivators below the Radiant Moon realm. After Di Beichun discovered that his sword couldn't cut through the rattan, he knew that the rattan was filled with wood attribute energy and was far more resilient than normal. In this forest, wood attribute energy was the most abundant, so it was too difficult to use other methods to break it. The corners of Qin Hongliang's mouth gradually rose. Since the beginning of the fight, he had been secretly afraid that he would be defeated by Di Beichun if he wasn't careful. In desperation, he could only use his killing move. In fact, he hadn't mastered this move for long, and it wasn't 100% successful. Fortunately, he was lucky this time and successfully used it. As long as Di Beichun couldn't break this move, he would win. Han Bowen and the others smiled happily when they saw this scene. It seemed that the situation wasn't as bad as they thought. No matter how strong Di Beichun was, he was still limited by his level. Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but secretly rejoice. He had always been afraid of Di Beichun's strong rise, but he didn't dare to act rashly because he worried that he might not be a match for Di Beichun. Now that Qin Hongliang had helped him solve this big problem, he didn't have to worry about it anymore. It was easy to imagine how happy he was. Di Beichun, you're too arrogant. Qin Hongliang looked coldly at Di Beichun, and his calm voice was full of ridicule. How arrogant was Di Beichun before? Wasn't he still trapped in the rattan and unable to move? If you admit your mistake and beg for mercy, I might consider letting you live. Qin Hongliang couldn't hide his pride. Of course, even if Di Beichun begged for mercy, he wouldn't let him go. However, only by humiliating him before he died would he be able to vent his anger even more thoroughly. However, just when Qin Hongliang was feeling extremely complacent, a dazzling sword chi suddenly appeared from the vine cage. It was an extremely sharp sword energy that seemed to be able to cut through everything in the world. It was invincible and invincible. You think too much. The magnetic and pleasant voice carried with it an icy chill. Everyone only heard a crisp sound before the seemingly indestructible cage was completely shattered. A cool breeze blew and his robes fluttered. That godlike handsome figure once again appeared before everyone's eyes. His incomparably handsome face held a playful smile, with a hint of wickedness and arrogance, but it was so pleasing to the eye. The one who should be begging for mercy is you. Looking at Di Beichun, who had escaped, Qin Hongliang's eyes were filled with shock. For a moment, he couldn't come back to his senses. How is this possible? His eyes were lifeless as if he had received a huge blow. His mind was completely blank. His master had clearly told him that this move could be considered his ultimate move. It was impossible for cultivators below the Radiant Moon Realm to break through this move, but Di Beichun had broken through it. How is this possible? Han Bowen and Nangong Yuqing's eyes widened, and their hearts were in a perilous situation. Soon, Nangong Yuqing's expression returned to normal. It seemed that he had been right all along. Di Beichun was an existence that defied common sense. Chapter 58:21. Even though this was the second time they had seen Di Beichun use this move, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were still amazed. They were keenly aware that the second time Di Beichun used it, he was obviously more proficient than the first time, and his speed was also faster. In fact, they had practiced this move at the same time as Di Beichun, but they had never used it before. Even though they had practiced it for a long time, there was still a gap in the strength of the sword chi. Di Beichun did not give Qin Hongliang time to think. He stabbed out with his sword again, and a dazzling sword light quietly appeared. This time, everyone was closer, so they could feel him more clearly. Nangong Yuqing only felt that the sharp sword chi seemed to be able to pierce through everything. This was almost beyond his understanding. It was even more terrifying than the strongest martial skill he had ever seen. He could not believe that Di Beichun possessed such a martial skill. Even the Nangong family did not possess such a level of martial skill. A dazzling light flashed, and Di Beichun turned around indifferently and walked back to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Everyone looked at Qin Hongliang, who was still standing in the same place, with some doubts in their hearts. Wasn't this supposed to be a fight to the death? Why did it suddenly end? Eldest senior brother? Han Bowen called out softly, only to find that Qin Hongliang was still standing in the same place with the same expression as before, completely ignoring him. Seeing this, Han Bowen frowned slightly, not understanding what was going on. However, when he reached out to touch Qin Hongliang's head rolled to the ground, and his face spun a few times before coming to a stop. No one had expected such a situation, and for a moment, the Blue Cloud Sect's cultivators' faces were filled with horror. Eldest senior brother. Everyone wailed, and when they looked at D. Bachin again, there was a trace of fear in their eyes besides hatred. In their eyes, the strength of their eldest senior brother was already an extremely powerful existence. But D. Bachin had not yet broken through to the Radiant Moon realm, yet he was able to kill their eldest senior brother. If he broke through to the Radiant Moon realm, that scene, they did not dare to think about it. Looking at the sorrowful faces of the Blue Cloud Sect's cultivators, D. Bachin did not care. It was Qin Hongliang who had proposed the death match, and the result was also his own choice. D. Bachin, you actually killed our eldest senior brother. Han Bowen pointed his finger at D. Bachin. His blood rushed to his head, and his face was filled with anger. D. Bachin only glanced at his hand, and Han Bowen could not help but be startled. He sheepishly withdrew his hand. So what? Han Bowen was stunned and continued. Our Azure Cloud sect will not let you off. So you're saying that you're forcing us to kill all of you? Bailey Hongzhuang, who was standing next to D. Bachin, suddenly spoke. Looking at the married couple's appearance, Han Bowen and the others were so angry that they were speechless. How could you speak like that? These two people were really a match made in heaven, where you kill and I sharpen my blade. Murong Jing and the others' eyes were cold, and it was obvious that they were ready to attack. As long as Han Bowen and the others dared to make any movements, they would definitely attack without hesitation. Seeing this, the Blue Cloud Sect's cultivators could only swallow their frustration. They were more worried that if D. Bachin and the others had the intention to kill, all of them might have to die here. Chapter 58:22. If he had known that they were such a useless bunch, he would not have chosen to come here with them. He suddenly admired Huang Fugang. Perhaps he had already guessed that this would happen, so he left first. With such pig-like teammates, it was better to act on his own. Although Qin Hongliang's cultivation was good, his brain was not good. The situation should not have reached this point, but he had courted death by proposing a battle to the death. He deserved to end up like this. This guy must have not heard of D. Bachin's deeds, so he was overconfident. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret, so he could only regret it in hell. Nangong Yuqing, it seems that your vision is not very good. Bali Yin Che looked at Nangong Yuqing mockingly. Do you want to try fighting with us? I heard that you have also broken through to the Radiant Moon stage. Hearing this, everyone's eyes were fixed on Nangong Yuqing. The cultivators of the Nangong family tensed up in an instant. Once they started fighting, a great battle would break out between the two forces. Han Bowen looked at Nangong Yuqing expectantly. If Nangong Yuqing wanted to fight with them, they would accompany him to the end. However, Nangong Yuqing ignored Han Bowen and said with a faint smile, "You think too much. I just dropped something and came back to look for it. It seems that I can't find it, so let's leave." What a joke. D. Bachin's move just now. Even he didn't have the confidence to avoid it. He did not want to lose his life here. Moreover, Qin Hongliang had nothing to do with him, so why should he take the risk for him? Han Bowen did not expect Nangong Yuqing to be so cowardly. He did not even dare to fight. So, what should they do? From the beginning to the end, D. Bachin only looked at Nangong Yuqing indifferently. He did not intend to pay attention to this guy, but sooner or later, he would become a stumbling block because of his appearance. When the time was right, he would completely eliminate this trouble. Since he did not understand the situation, there was no need to keep him alive. Nangong Yuqing smiled and cupped his fists. Just as he was about to leave, the sound of dense footsteps came from not far away. Just based on this sound, everyone was sure that this was a very large group, perhaps even more than the number of people here. Soon, a group of people appeared in everyone's sight. At first glance, D. Bachin noticed Chen Feng from the Great Devil Sect. However, apart from Chen Feng, he also saw Chu Yingming and several other powers. Chen Feng, we meet again. A warm smile appeared on D. Bachin's face. It was less cold and more amiable. Chen Feng was pleasantly surprised to see D. Bachin. Bachin, you are still alive. This is great. Now, I'm afraid that everyone in the ancient battlefield thinks that we have died. Chin chuckled. Almost everyone, when they saw them, would say this in the first sentence. Chun Feng shrugged helplessly. The incident at the pavilion in the middle of the lake has spread far and wide. In a short period of time, everyone knows about it. I think only a small number of people don't know about it. Why are there so many of you here? Chapter 58:23. When Chu Yingming and the rest saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were all standing there safely, they couldn't help but sigh inwardly. They were truly lucky. From the looks of it, the whirlpool that suddenly appeared at the bottom of the lake might have been there to save their lives. After all, under such circumstances, it would have been too difficult for Beichen's group to return to the shore alive. If they hadn't been sucked into the lake, perhaps they would have already died. Perhaps they might even have obtained some incredible, fortuitous encounter at the bottom of the lake. Actually, we encountered it not too long ago. A few days ago, we noticed that something strange was happening in this area. In the evening, the fiery clouds would change into a unique shape and appear in this area every time. At first, we didn't pay much attention to it. However, after noticing that this was happening frequently, we decided to come and take a look. Along the way, we met other groups. After finding out that everyone had the same goal, we decided to travel together. With a smile on his face, Chun Feng explained the situation without any hesitation. The cultivators from the various sects did not expect Chun Feng to be so frank. Although they had already noticed this problem, there were even more groups that hadn't noticed it. Since everyone was paying more attention to their surroundings, very few people noticed the abnormality in the sky. Chun Feng explained the situation in detail without hiding anything. It could be seen that the rumors were true. Chun Feng was very close to the young master of the D family. Hearing this, Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other helplessly. In fact, during the past few days, since they had nothing to do during the day, they had also noticed the sky. It seemed like the secret of the blood spirit stone couldn't be kept. Bailey Hongzhuang shook his head without leaving a trace. Since things had already turned out this way, there was no need to hide it anymore. After seeing the groups from the Huangfu family, Nangong family, and Qingyun sect today, everyone had a premonition in their hearts. Previously, they had walked for so many days without encountering a single group. However, in one day, they had encountered so many groups. It could be seen that this was fate. After Chun Feng finished explaining his purpose for coming here, he turned his gaze to the corpse on the ground not far away. It was Qin Hongliang, the eldest disciple of the Qingyun sect. As a member of the sect, he had some contact with Qin Hongliang. He didn't expect this guy to be dead. His gaze swept past Nangong Yuqing and Han Bowen before finally landing on Beichen and the others. He didn't even need to think to know that Qin Hongliang had died at their hands. When Han Bowen saw so many teams, he was overjoyed. Even the heavens were helping him. Originally, when he saw Nangong Yuqing's indifferent attitude, he was worried about what they should do. Once Beichen and the others attacked them, they would have the advantage in both numbers and strength. As a result, they would be in great danger. However, now that so many teams had come, the most important thing was that Xiaoyao Palace had a very good relationship with them. With a helper, their chances of escaping unscathed would be much higher. Han Bowen, what happened? How could Hong Liang? Gu Wenchang of Xiaoyao Palace walked to Han Bowen's side, his face filled with shock. Chapter 58:24. Following Han Bowen's words, everyone's gaze turned towards Beichen. They never thought that Beichen would have a conflict with the Qingyun sect. Han Bowen, please get this straight. The person who proposed the battle was your eldest senior brother. Later on, the person who changed his mind and proposed a battle to the death was also your eldest senior brother. Now that things have turned out this way, are you blaming us? Bali Yin Che's gaze was cold. He was also amazed by Han Bowen's ability to distort the truth. As long as it was a battle to the death, there was no need to say anything more. Winning was due to one's ability, and losing was due to one's lack of strength. Sure enough, after hearing this explanation, the crowd no longer had any thoughts of asking further. Although they did not know why Qin Hongliang would provoke Beichen for no reason. Since he was the one who proposed the battle to the death and had fallen, he could only blame himself for making the wrong judgment. Han Bowen glared at by Li Yin Che with resentment. Initially, he had only wanted to deal with Jiang Wenyan. However, this group of people had dragged them into this and even forced them into this situation. No matter what, he could not let Di Beiqian and the others escape unscathed today. A sinister idea formed in Han Bowen's mind. He wanted to pull everyone to his side. Di Beiqian and the others have a treasure in their hands. Han Bowen shouted loudly. Previously, Jiang Wenyan and I had discovered a treasure together. However, they had taken it away. My eldest senior brother had wanted to take it back, but ended up in this situation. The crowd was not interested in the grudge between the Qingyun sect and the Di family. However, after hearing the word treasure, everyone's eyes brightened. Up until now, everyone's gains in the ancient battlefield were pitifully small. However, everyone understood that the gains from this place must be something extraordinary. Originally, everyone had suspected that Di Beiqian and the others had obtained a considerable gain from the bottom of the lake. However, no one had said anything. Naturally, they did not take the initiative to mention this. Now that Han Bowen had pointed out this point, everyone's thoughts became lively. Chen Feng noticed the sinister look in Han Bowen's eyes, and his face sank. Ownerless items have always belonged to whoever obtains them. It's your fault for not being able to obtain them, due to your lack of strength. However, now you intend to borrow everyone's hands to help you take revenge. Aren't you too despicable? Chen Feng's protection caught everyone off guard. As such, everyone was dumbstruck. In the past, he had never seen Chen Feng protecting others. Chen Feng had always thought highly of himself and ignored others. However, his cultivation made everyone have no choice but to take him seriously. Among the cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield, there were very few cultivators who had broken through to the Radiant Moon Realm. However, this Chen Feng was truly too freakish. Not only had he broken through to the Radiant Moon Realm, he had even reached the second stage of the Radiant Moon Realm. Among them, none of them were Chen Feng's match. Ever since this guy had made a name for himself, his strength had been crushing everyone. No matter how hard everyone tried to catch up, this guy was still firmly ahead of them. Han Bowen blanked for a moment before his eyes flickered. Even though he was being ignored, he still said unyieldingly, "Chen Feng, aren't you usually quite arrogant? Now you are actually so protective of them. Do you really think that they will share this treasure with you? Stop dreaming." That's right. Gu Wenchang agreed. He was also interested in this treasure. However, their strength alone was not enough. As such, he had to help Han Bowen convince the others. Chapter 58-25. Even if they had the advantage in numbers, if Chen Feng decided to help Di Beiqian, they would still have to think twice. After all, this competition did not depend on numbers. As long as Chen Feng, Di Beiqian, and the others could suppress the leader, the result would be set. Chen Feng, we came here together. Why don't you ask Di Beiqian to show us the treasure? Gu Wenchang said. Or you can see if he is willing to show it to you. Don't be a fool. Everyone's gaze landed on Chen Feng and Di Beiqian. This was a test of the trust between them. However, Chen Feng ignored Gu Wenchang's words. His expression was indifferent, but his voice was firm. Gu Wenchang, I don't care about these things. He is my brother. What's mine is his. Do you think I would covet these things? Ah, Chen Feng sneered disdainfully. His attitude was clear. Not only Chen Feng, but the cultivators of the Great Devil sect were also unmoved. After coming out of the Immortal Cloud's secret domain, they had a good impression of Di Beiqian and the others. There were a lot of treasures in this world, but it was impossible to rob someone just because they knew they had a treasure. Seeing that his attempt to sow discord was useless, Gu Wenchang's expression became unsightly. Although this kind of thing happened from time to time, it had never failed. He did not expect to be defeated this time. After seeing that there was no hope, everyone turned their gaze to Nangong Yuqing and Chu Yingming. Everyone was silent, but the atmosphere was somewhat strange. Di Beiqian and the others knew that these people were plotting against each other. They were comparing the strength of both sides to see what their chances of victory were. As long as they were sure that their chances of victory were higher, they would definitely make their move. Chu Yingming noticed that everyone was looking at him. He looked at them indifferently and said, "Treasures belong to whoever obtains them. It is only natural." Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang healed his injuries, he had put away his original hatred. If she hadn't saved him, he would be dead by now. It was obvious that the D family was on the rise. Coupled with Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as the Saint of the Light, they needed to think twice before making an enemy out of them. Back then, his father had spent so much effort to resolve the grudge between them. He would not stir up this conflict again. Chu Yingming's reaction was clearly outside of everyone's expectations. But like this, everyone had no chance of winning. Han Bowen and Gu Wenchang looked at each other. No one had thought of this situation, but they couldn't think of any other way if they couldn't resolve it at this point. You bunch of idiots. Even at a time like this, you still pretend to be sincere. If he really treated you as friends, he wouldn't have been so secretive and not said anything. Han Bowen couldn't hold back the anger in his heart and sneered. Di Beichen looked at Han Bowen indifferently. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth rose into a devilish smile. I know that everyone wants to see what we obtained. I can show it to everyone. I can even share it with everyone.